chambers this morning. Mary Canley, a Capitol employee who managed to escape the House chambers, described the troubling scene to reporters.
I saw all of them. About 400 to 500 completely deranged people just rambling on about guns, the military, and money.
Investigators say the lunatics, many of whom are believed to suffer from severe personality disorders, have locked themselves in the chambers for hours now, with no clear purpose or reasoning.
I looked at one of them right in the eyes, and it was like he was empty on the inside, devoid of any emotion or feeling. It was horrifying. It's only a matter of time before they do something that really hurts someone.
We believe these men to be manipulative and extremely dangerous. Luckily, they are also very disorganized, and there is a chance they may never be able to ever take any action at all. For more on this developing story, keep checking theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 is the phone number for you to call. That's 603-283-6160. But we do have some caller on the line. With you in the studio tonight for this episode of Free Talk Live, it's me, Bonnie.
Jay Noon.
And Mark Edge.
And I'm going to go straight into the phones because we have a caller who I scheduled to call in because he has a very interesting presentation. His name is Bear Arms. Bear, are you with us?
I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. What was it you wanted to tell people about today? I did go to your presentation. It's very interesting when you did it like live and keen. What was it about?
Yes. Well, I've been promoting this idea of lawful tax avoidance, and recently I put together a small book. It's about 26 pages plus 3 pages of reference on the tax on federal income, which is what we're supposed to pay later on this year, or many of us, in April. So I thought I'd get that document out there for your audience to look at, read, and ponder while they decide what to do with their financial futures and so forth.
Well, I am working on getting logged into the Free Talk Live Twitter, and it's just at freetalklive.com, and then I'm going to post it in there so people can check it out. But what does the tax on federal income mean to you, Bear?
Well, we've been taught since birth that there's 2 things that we can't avoid. One is death, and the other is taxes. Well, it turns out the second part of that statement is not exactly true. In fact, the whole tax scheme has been pulled over us as a deception from about around the time of World War I and World War II. But the tax on federal income, or commonly known as the federal income tax, was established as an excise tax all the way back in 1863, I believe, to support the Civil War. And it was, for a time, revoked, and then it came back later, known as the 16th Amendment. So in my book, we talk about what the federal income tax is, and it is, in fact, the tax on federal income, and is not the federal tax on income, and that's the most important distinction. And then secondly...
Well, what is the distinction between federal income and income?
Federal income is a species of income derived from a federal privilege. For example, federal wages are federal income. For example, corporate income is federal income because corporations derive the benefits of trademark protection, perpetual existence, and also limited liability protection. So they owe the federal government an excise or a cut of their action. And income in general is defined as a gain made from capital and or labor together. So income is something that you are entitled to. However, the way that the word income is used in the tax code, it specifically means federal income. And that's what my book also talks about.
Well, I'm going to let you plug the book. No problem there. I just have, well, I guess my biggest concern is that I have some friends. Have you heard of a man named Larkin Rose?
I have.
Have you heard of a man named Irwin Schiff?
Yes, and I have studied both of those people, and unfortunately, they didn't get it right. They really didn't. And as much as they
let me tell the audience who they are. They're a couple of men who have gone to prison with a line of you don't have to pay you don't have to pay tax because the federal government doesn't have it exactly right. They're pulling the wool over your eyes, that kind of thing. A shtick that sounds very similar to what you're saying. And I'm not saying that I don't know. I'm not a tax expert, but I think that it's worth pointing out that people in the past have tried something similar and it hasn't worked.
Hey, Bear, could you maybe brief a little bit on either Larkin or Irwin Schiff? I'd like to hear where Larkin went wrong. I kind of understand where Irwin Schiff went wrong. I've studied his thing too. I wasn't even aware that Larkin Rose had an IRS issue.
Well, they all go wrong because they forget to actually read the code and understand the code based on the words of control, the controlling words of the code. And this is something that took me a while to figure out. But in the book, I say that there's about 3.8 million words in the IRS code and another probably 4 or 5 million in the IRS regulations, which are the regulations derived from the statutes. And so in all, we're talking about 8 million words. And there's no way that one person could reasonably read and absorb all of it. However, all 8 million words and every single definition of those 8 million words are derived from 4 words. And this is something that I think I figured out on myself, by myself, and it's unique to a part of to the part that I'm presenting to the crowd. And those 4 words are PISS, all right? Property, income, service, and source. Those are the 4 words upon which all IRS definitions are based. For example, in Section 3401, we have a word called wages. And wages are defined as remuneration for service. Okay? So the word service means government service. And you will know this once you read the book, that the word service means that because, first of all, you know what you say to veterans to thank them? You don't thank them for their protection. You don't thank them for their hard work. You thank them for their service. And so the word service means government service. And I lay that out clearly and in the form of a proof in this book. And the other word is source. And that word is not defined anywhere. And that word, it took me a long time to find. But the word source means government sources of revenue. And where you could find that in the constitutions of the original 13 states, and you can also find that in the U.S. Treasury revenue breakdown that they have on the internet, online, where they describe sources of government revenue and sources of government income. So that's something that is unique to my academic studies.
So how long have you been doing this, and tell me about the successes?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, I'm not the first one to do this, and I don't want to take credit from the crowd that has been doing this. And if you go to a website called the Lost Horizons / bulletin board, you'll see which by the way is referenced in the book that I have on page 2 at the bottom, you will see that over the last 20 years, since about year 2000 or maybe even earlier, thousands and thousands of people have been doing this, and thousands of people have been getting their money back. Now, you asked about me
getting their money back.
Yeah, Bear
from the
says he
federal
did it.
government.
Yeah.
From the federal government.
And do we have pictures of checks and things?
That's exactly how it's posted. Yeah, they have scanned pictures of thousands of people with their checks, not only from the federal government, but also from the state governments.
Give me that website one more time.
Yeah, well, it's let me read it out so I'm not losthorizon.com. Wait, Lost Horizons with an S.com, bulletin board dot HM or HTM. And again, it's
hold on. I want to go. Go ahead. I'm sorry if I didn't mean to talk over you while you're giving the thing, because I have more questions. Please go ahead, Bear.
Sure, of course. By the way, your questions are good. I'm prepared to answer all of them so that there would be full disclosure. But let me answer the rest of your question, which is what has been my experience. Well, my experience is that I've started doing this in 2016, which has been a full 7 years. And the first year I got my money back. In addition, they added interest to the check that they sent me. Moreover, your viewers might want to know that the IRS prosecution has a 6-year maximal statute of limitations. So I'm pretty sure that at least for the first couple of years that I've done it, it's beyond repair in that regard. Not that they can't come after me in theory for other ones later on, but I can also show you what we've done in terms of replying to the IRS and how they have responded. And those things can be seen in the videos which are referenced at the end of the book where it says credits and references. You can just click on the videos.
My fundamental question, what it all comes down to is, don't you think the people in the government, if they were writing the laws, would write the laws so that everybody had to pay income tax? That's what they want, and you would claim that's what they want, right? They want everybody to pay income tax, but your claim kind of pivots on, well, they can't do it because this word means this and this word means that. But I mean, these are the head liars, right? Like these are the liars, that make the whole thing work. And these liars can't manipulate the language in such a fashion that the rest of us have to pay tax.
Well, they have manipulated the language. What the problem is that people have not been diligent enough to follow their manipulations. And so and I want to address your point directly because that is also in the book that I wrote, and specifically the chapter on, I wouldn't even call it a chapter, but specifically it's a chapter on controlling words. And those are the 4 controlling words that they cannot redefine. Now, I'm going to tell you why they can't redefine it, because of certain Supreme Court decisions and principles of constitutional law, namely that it is elementary law that every statute is to be read in the light of the Constitution. And
but the Constitution, I mean, you said it yourself, it was a 16th Amendment that changed the Constitution. So presumably, what's that?
Actually, it did not change. It did not change the Constitution in any significant way. What it did was to clarify that income from all sources, whatever derived, is taxable. Now, to understand that statement, you have to know what the word sources mean. And the word sources is one of the 4 words which is in the definition that they cannot define or redefine. And I'm trying to convey to you the reason why they cannot define that. And it's based on about 5 or 6 Supreme Court decisions. And I'll read it briefly. So if you would give me a moment.
Oh, go right ahead.
And it goes something like this.
So long as everyone understands that this is the advice of Bear and not the advice of Free Talk Live, because I don't know.
No, not at all.
I find it very interesting, though. Go ahead, Bear.
This is not advice. What this is opening the door for your viewers and your listeners to see what's out there. They can make up their own mind as to how they wish to use this knowledge, right? But it's an amount of knowledge which accumulated over many, many years, not just by me, but by Americans across the country. Little parts and bits are put together, and now I've summarized it. And if I may, I'm just going to read the part where it says that the Congress cannot redefine the words that are used in the Constitution. So it goes something like this. It's elementary law that every statute is to be read in the light of the Constitution, and every word must have its due force and appropriate meaning, and no word is to be regarded as unnecessary or needlessly added. The Constitution is a written document. As such, its meaning does not alter. That which it meant when it was adopted, it means now. And then words in the Constitution must be read with the gloss of experience of those who framed them, and would receive the significance of the experience to which they were addressed, a significance not to be found in the dictionary. In other words, the Constitution is not only the supreme law of the land, but it forms the basis of all dictionary terms in the legal dictionary in American law. Now, moreover, since Congress cannot invoke the power or the sovereignty of the people to override their will as declared in the Constitution, Congress cannot, by any definition it may adopt, redefine the words in the Constitution, because it cannot, by legislation, alter the Constitution from which alone it derives its power to legislate. That's Eisner versus Macomber. So my point is, those four words, if you look at where they come from, let's say the word property, since we haven't touched on that. The word property comes from two places in the Constitution. The first place is Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2, and it says Congress shall have the power to make any needful rules or regulations respecting its territory or other property belonging to the United States. That's the first place that the word property is used. And that property is distinctly different from life, liberty, and property which cannot be deprived of without due process of law, and private property which cannot be taken without just compensation under the Fifth Amendment. So if you look back at the Supreme Court decisions which I read, it's quite telling that there's two kinds of properties that are mentioned in the Constitution, and it is only the property in Article 4 over which Congress shall have the power to make needful rules.
Well, what property
and
is that, Bear? I mean, what property is Congress able to make laws about? Because it seems like they make laws about all the land that exists in the United States, right?
It seems so. It does seem that way, doesn't it?
Well, Bear, and I also know that you were there at Ian's trial. I mean, we had long conversations and talked, and you saw him get found guilty of 4 charges of tax evasion.
Yeah,
and
but
in that case,
they just had to convince some dumb jury people to say a thing. They didn't have to prove something. It's not like they had to actually prove something and it be confirmed that it was legal for him to go to jail. They just have to convince a bunch of people who. How
much time do I have to spend in jail to prove Bear's theory is correct?
So let me because you're talking about Ian and his trial, and especially his charges of I believe it was failure to
what
file.
I would like to, the point I'm trying to make about Ian's trial is that don't expect anything that remotely looks like a fair trial, or for a jury of 12 of your peer ignoramuses to find you guilty or not guilty simply because there wasn't evidence or whatever.
And also, he had a lawyer, and all the people I've known that have been convicted, they've all had lawyers. I mean,
yes.
It's really the bottom line.
Right.
I've seen people who don't have lawyers get convicted too, but
sure. Yeah. But I can tell you, I know of some personal family members. 3 of them, they are all charged with the same exact federal crime. My father, my father and my grandmother, 2 family members, and another guy who actually wasn't a family member, charged with the same exact crime, aiding, abetting a felony flea prosecution. My dad did not have a lawyer. He defended himself. My grandmother and the other guy, they had lawyers. The people, my grandmother and the other guy got convicted. My father did not get convicted. He won at his jury trial, and because lawyers are by definition they're definitely incompetent when it comes to defending your rights. In fact, they can't defend your rights. All they can do is represent a fiction. So and then my dad actually wrote the appeals for the other guy and my grandmother, and within about 90 days they were both out of jail. The appeals were overturned. So, anyways, go ahead.
Here's one thing that people don't realize is that lawyers are good at factual manipulation and manipulation of words. However, one thing they can't challenge of the court is jurisdiction, and the fact that there is a failure to file charge before that Ian was convicted on. There's a couple things you have to know about that charge. That charge did not have jurisdiction, and that's one. And number two, unfortunately, Ian's lawyer did not fight that charge at all, and so he would have been found guilty of that with 99% probability anyway, because by the time you step into a charge like that, having failed to challenge jurisdiction properly, I would say, the chance of being found guilty is extremely high. And because lawyers can't challenge jurisdiction, that pretty much means that he couldn't win that on those charges. Now, let me just describe what that would mean to challenge jurisdiction in the case of failure to file, because your listeners may want to know this. Now, the United States Tax Court, if you go to their website, it says in section 7441 of Title 26 of the United States Internal Revenue Code, it is hereby established under Article 1 of the Constitution of the United States, a court of record known as the tax court. Now, what I just told you is that being established under Article 1 of the United States Constitution means that it is a legislative forum over which Congress can make all needful rules and regulations respective the presumptive property, whether or not it's real or fiction, that you're alleged to have. Okay, there's the jurisdiction part. It's presumptive, it's alleged, and it's not even real. Okay, and then the other part is that regarding the property. Property doesn't only mean things. It doesn't mean a brick of gold or a bar of silver or Federal Reserve notes. It also means rights. So, for example, if you have a corporation, you have exercised a property right belonging to the United States, and therefore the corporation is subject to the tax on that excisable privilege.
Are all the employees of the corporation also liable to pay income tax, or is it only the corporation itself?
So you're mixing a couple of words here that I want to make sure that viewers understand, or rather your audience understands.
We should get into it in the next segment. It's 603-283-6160. More from Bear Arms on Free Talk Live is coming up. 603-283-6160.
In this week's Onion Tips section, 5 easy ways to adapt your deplorable and parasitic existence for the upcoming Armageddon. Tip 1. Focus on preparing your home for any number of disaster situations, which still probably won't take your mind off of your impending death or the myriad mistakes you made in your short, pitiful life. Tip 2. Make sure your linens are clean prior to the upcoming catastrophe, as these are likely the very same sheets on which you will soon be slowly asphyxiated. Tip 3. Take some time off work and spend your last days free from the bonds of the oppressive machine that was just about the only thing giving you a purpose to your otherwise insignificant days. Tip 4. Spend your final waking minutes before the end of the world with your family, knowing full well you'd rather be doing a number of other gratifying yet completely depraved things. Right, sicko? In other news, a smitten foot fetishist thinks these may be the two. A woman and her gay best friend go on another one of their little adventures, and a dead daughter would have wanted a $220 million liability settlement.
This is the Onion News Network.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Former US President Donald Trump is blasting the civil fraud case brought against him in New York. Speaking to reporters after his defense team made its closing arguments, Mr. Trump attacked the New York Attorney General who brought the case, insulted the judge, and declared himself an innocent man.
She's a political hack, the Attorney General. The judge is obviously extremely friendly with the group, and we'll see what happens. I think maybe he may surprise people.
Donald Trump and his adult male children are accused of inflating the value of assets to obtain favourable terms from lenders. Police reportedly responded to a bomb threat at the home of the judge presiding over the case. William Denslow's outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan.
The former president denies wrongdoing and says the case should never have been brought against him. In a statement, New York Attorney General Letitia James said the trial revealed the full scale and scope of fraud committed by Trump. Before the trial began, Judge Arthur Engoron ruled the former president was liable for fraud. Prosecutors are seeking $370 million in damages and for Trump to be barred from doing business in New York. William Denslow in Lower Manhattan.
Consumer prices in the US rose again in December, according to the Labour Department. Costs for things like housing, dining out and car insurance increased more than expected, according to consumer price data that shows inflation is still holding a grip on the US economy. The Labour Department said that prices rose 3.4% in December compared with the year before. But if you strip out volatile food and fuel prices to get a sense of the underlying inflation trend, a core price measure actually dropped from 4% to 3.9%. That shows that while inflation remains faster than usual and bumps are to be expected, it is making progress back towards a normal pace. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission has approved the first ever Bitcoin exchange-traded funds to come out of the US. ETFs are investment funds that will track Bitcoin prices and pave the way for more of the public to buy it. US correspondent Benji Heyer explains.
This marks a massive step for Bitcoin, essentially allowing people to buy an ETF that invests in the cryptocurrency. An ETF is an investment fund that tracks the performance of an asset without owning it, stocks, currency, gold, for example. A Bitcoin ETF, though, opens this world to people or organizations to buy and sell to those with little trading experience. It'll be much easier to own shares of Bitcoin. It may start appearing in mainstream portfolios. The cryptocurrency soared more than 70% in recent months, but it's not endorsed or advocated by the SEC.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
You control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And I'd like to tell you that Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash, Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency made for spending. You can pay your bills with Dash at Spritz.finance, plus they can send dollars to your bank if you still need those for some reason. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay Noon.
And Mark Edge coming to you from a remote location in Florida.
And we had more to talk to Bear Arms about. Bear, you just put out your first book file about legal, or is it lawful, tax avoidance?
Lawful tax avoidance, yes.
Well, I wanted to go back to a question Mark asked that Jay and I were discussing during the break that I still feel hasn't been answered. So Mark asked you, why do they write it this convoluted way where they don't really have the authority to take taxes for you, but they do because people don't question it? Why do they do it this way instead of just saying, we have the right to Well, the Constitution talks about men. Well, we have the right to tax all men of all of their actual belongings. Like, why don't they just do it that way? Wouldn't it be easier for them and people would accept it? I mean, the average person, I say, would.
Right. They already accept it. I mean, the income tax is 99% accepted.
I would beg to differ. First of all, the income tax is not accepted by 99% of people. In fact, a lot of people I know don't pay any income tax. They actively and lawfully avoid the income tax.
I've never participated in that particular scheme.
I said 99%. And, the reason I hang out with you guys is because you are definitely not part of the 99%.
Well, you got it. So then we're definitely not paying that income tax. But I'll tell you what.
And I will say this. I have looked into the income tax, and it's probably around 50% of Americans pay income tax. Now, many Americans are below the age of working age. Many are above the working age, and many are married. So it's really hard to tell exactly how many, but somewhere around, say 45 to 65% is, from what I can tell, is paying income tax.
We're trying to make that number a little smaller because I believe that the income tax, the real reason for the income tax, is to shrink government and not to expand it. Because if we define it as the tax on federal income, and if it were popularly known as that, then the government would have to pay about 25% more for the same labor they purchase from the labor market, thereby shrinking it. It also is a advantage for corporations to pay for labor and not for service, which is a big difference, by the way. By paying for labor, they get to expand their company and use it as a tax deduction, whereas if they say they're paying for service, then they're saying they're paying for government service, and thereby they are bearing false witness against their hardworking laborers, and that's actually not lawful at all, because bearing false witness, as you know, is against one of the 10 Commandments. Now, before the break, you had asked me a question. Do people who own the corporations as well as their employees, are they required to pay the federal income tax or the tax on federal income? Now, that's when we have to go into this concept of a logical fallacy, something called syntactic ambiguity. In other words, where language may be interpreted in more than one way due to the ambiguous sentence structure or the definitions that are used. In law, that's called equivocation. It's called an equivocation fallacy. And what you proposed was a question using that fallacy, even though you may not know it yourself. And it comes in the form of asking about the word employee. Now, if you look at the word employee, it's commonly thrown around. But legally, it's defined at 3401 of Title 26. And an employee means a government employee, an office or an officer of a corporation. So think about that.
I'm thinking about how many times the accountant has told me that I have employees and that they weren't working for the government.
Accountants are like lawyers. They're super incompetent. All these people who have these, government paperworks and college certificates, I just find the more letters that they have after their names and the more, certificates of achievement they get from institutions, the more incompetent they are.
This is one thing. There's this group of people that you, Bear, Jay, Bear, perhaps Bonnie. There's this group of people that knows the truth, or at least has some inkling of what the truth is about the tax code. Let me ask you, how many people on the other side, how many people within the United States government, or even, people who aren't in the United States government, know the truth about the tax code and perpetuate the lie? Because I have never met one. That doesn't mean that it's not true, and it doesn't mean they weren't lying. I'm just wondering, is it a small, tiny little cabal? Are most of the federal government employees who are paying income tax
so let me explain that, and I wrote that on page 26, and I answered that exact question. And it comes from an Upton Sinclair quote, and it says, and he said, "It's difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on not understanding it." So all those tax lawyers and CPAs out there, the reason they exist is because they're quote unquote protecting you from the greater evils of taxation. And if that taxation, the evil of taxation, were gone, or if it were properly applied, then they wouldn't have a job. Okay, it's that simple. They don't want you to know the truth, even if they do want to know the truth. I'll give you.
And
an
I'll
example.
accept that, Bear. I think that's reasonable to accept it because my uncle, who's a CPA, is likely not lying to me about what his beliefs are surrounding the tax code. But my question is, how many of them know? How many of them out there, when I file this paperwork that says, give me my money back for all those years of taxation and all that money you got from me to drop $1 million bombs on $10 tents on people around the world, give me that money back. How many of them are going to know to give me my money back?
Again, I would say it depends on their intelligence and it depends on their experience. And I would say that in general,
not whether they could know, but whether they do know right now.
They probably do know. I would say about 20% of those guys do know what's going on. You know how I found out? Just to give you an idea, I found out because I used to be an employee, not an elected official, but an officer of the United States. So I found out through working for the federal government about this. Okay, so this is not unknown to people, and anybody who studies it deeply will very soon understand this.
Bear, were you in the military? Is that where you?
I was. Yes.
Yeah. I find that that's a different class of government employee. The O class, the E class government employees are they're just different creatures than the G class government employees. If people don't know what the difference is there, Bear does.
Yeah, I lived on a military base that was mostly civilians for the first time in my life as a late teenager, early 20-something-year-old. They are different than all of the military people I used to live around in a huge way. And they don't care about anything. And they just want to do the least amount work possible, the government, contractor types, and then go home. And they don't want to help you. They're like
entitled bureaucrats
that
do not care at all.
Yeah.
That they're just cogs in the machine.
So Mark, you said earlier that your uncle was a CPA. Have you thought about what the word CPA stands for and what they really do?
Certified public accountant.
Certified public accountant. In other words, what are they certified to do? They are certified to account.
Bring back Joa.
All right. That is why they don't know this stuff, because this is not public. Your income is not public. Your income is private, and that is why they're reading an entirely different book than what.
We love you, Joa.
Jay, stop. That's or not Jay Noon, but Jay Freeville is doing that. So I don't know how to stop it.
Jay's not doing that. Joa is.
All right. So anyway, talking about the CPA is one who is certified in accounting for public things, not certified private accountant. Okay, certified public accountant. That's why they're doing the Internal Revenue Code. They don't account for things that are external, for example. By the way, the word internal means within the United States. And by saying within the United States, you're really saying within the District of Columbia. And these things are actually defined in the tax code itself at section 7701 under the definition of a United States and the states. The United States includes the states, and the states include the District of Columbia. And you put those two together, you realize that the United States, when used in the context of the tax code, means the District of Columbia. And these things are not something that you would just pick up from reading. It actually took a while to figure out every little bit of these details. So anyway, did you have another question? Because I want to address your question and the questions of your audience as well.
Well, I'm concerned that, and I did go through the website and I did see some people claiming to have gotten money back. I couldn't really match the numbers to how much they said they got. The numbers seem to not qualify, but I'm, trying to read while I'm listening to you at the same time. And it's more important to engage in a conversation with you than it is to do research on this webpage. And what was the name of the webpage again?
It is losthorizons.com/bulletin board, I believe.
Right. And if people need to get that website, they can go to our podcast. That's archives.freetalklive.com. That's archives.freetalklive.com. They can get that link and do their own research here, which is all I'm asking.
Right. Do your own research. Nobody wants to, I don't want you to just do it like based on not understanding, just based on copying someone's homework. You got to do your own homework. By the way, that link is on page 2 of the PDF, which I created for your listeners that they can download. Yes. So I guess the other thing that is really important as far as what I've learned is that it is not the government which is actually at fault. You know who's at fault for making you pay the income tax or the tax on federal income? It's actually the person bearing false witness against you. So, for example, you go work, let's say you go work for Walmart, right? Just an example. When you work for Walmart will ask you to fill out a W-2. And in that W-2, it will use the terms of art defined by the IRS, namely employee, employer, and wages. And as I said earlier, all those are technical terms, and they are subject to the syntactual ambiguity and the logical fallacy of equivocation. So when you say employee, an employee is defined very, very specifically as an employee, an elected official, an officer of the United States, or
Bear,
an officer of the
can they
corporation.
hold me liable for not knowing these terms? I mean, do I need a lawyer to determine?
No, you need yourself.
Okay.
You need to know you need to know this stuff for yourself, because again, by the way, we're not dealing with lawyers. What we're dealing with is attorneys. And there's a big difference between
when I read the word wages, I think I know what that means. When I read the term employee, I think I know what that means. And all the rest of these terms, income, and
that's where you deceive yourself, because the word wages mean government pay for government service. It's remuneration for services performed by an employee for his employer, where an employer means the person for whom an employee performs any service. These are all very, very technical terms, and they're spun together as to confuse you. And if you don't actually read it for yourself, you will never know what they mean. The bottom line is employer means government. Employee means the employee of government or an officer of a corporation. And the word wages mean government pay for government service. For example,
I got you. I just, there's so many things I have to sort of, talk about on this one.
Yeah.
When my good friend Ian Freeman was in a trial, they spent for tax evasion, 4 counts of tax evasion. They spent very, 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 very little time talking about taxes and the avoidance thereof, the whatever deceptions he might have used or whatever, right? But the jury chose to find him guilty on this. Now, what that said to me is that, I better not ever get myself into a situation where I'm sitting in front of a jury and waiting on a fair trial. What it said to me is that a jury of ignoramuses is a deadly thing for one's liberty, because these 12 people agreed. There wasn't one person among these 12 people that's thought that a man who was not told how much he owed Not even close, not even given some notion. Was not asked for money, was not like, everything you could imagine as far as tax evasion would go. Like there wasn't a single fact that was presented. In fact, the IRS agent sat on the stand, and when asked by the attorney whether it is possible that Ian Freeman owes nothing, she said yes. The jury of his peers found him guilty and sent him to prison for 8 years. And all I can say is, boy, dear God, I don't want to go there talking to them about wages and all this other stuff. I just want to never be in front of those people.
You're absolutely right. And let me, and that's why I've addressed that, by the way. So if you go to the PDF that I wrote under FAQ, that's frequently asked questions, there's a part on number 5 on page 22. Okay, we're gonna talk about the guy named Lazy Larry. Lazy Larry works for a bear false witness. He blindly copied someone else's example for his tax return, but didn't study the law for himself. And although initially the government gave him his money back, a few years later, the IRS threatened him with a $5,000 frivolous returns penalty. And after months of arguing, the IRS rejected all of Lazy Larry's assertions and summoned him to tax court, where he eventually lost and was forced to pay tens of thousands of dollars. Where did Lazy Larry go wrong? That's a very important question, right? Because that's a question that addresses what most people fear. Now, let me read what Larry did right. Lazy Larry rightly asserted that he was not a taxpayer. He was not an employee, and he did not receive wages from an employer. What he forgot is that he who asserts bears the burden of proof, and that he cannot prove those assertions to the negative. In other words, he can't prove I'm not a taxpayer, or that I am not an employee, or so and so forth. And further, it was not the IRS who imposed the liability. It was actually bear false witness, the person Larry labored for. It was bear false witness who ignored the law and falsely claimed that he paid Lazy Larry remuneration for services when, as a private person, he was not, in fact, an employer and did not hire actual government employees, nor was he a recipient of government services. Thus, bear false witness.
Now, Bear, I mean, the IRS knows whether I'm the government or not, if I, as an employer, am the government or not. And them taking my word for it, them tossing out a bunch of terms and then taking my word for it that I'm the government sounds absolutely ridiculous.
Well, that's what they depend on you to believe, because when you believe that things are ridiculous and it can't be that bad or that simple or that way, then you've just allowed them to assert the presumption which are false.
So,
my presumption, to be clear, my presumption is this, that the people in government are parasites, and that the parasites have convinced themselves that they deserve whatever amount of money that they can get because people have been paying them all along, and that they have written laws that give them the quote unquote right to be able to do so. That's what my assumption is. My assumption is that
is unfortunately it's not right, because what you're assuming is that you are less powerful than you actually are. Now remember, our government.
But you're talking about the powers given to me by the government that the government is then trying to take away from me, Bear. I mean, like there's this sort of greater government that sits above the government or something.
Well, hold on. The government never gave you any powers. You gave the government powers.
No, I didn't.
Consented. No, you did. You did. You know why you did? Because who makes the laws, my friend? Isn't it your representatives who wrote up the laws and put them into papers?
I've voted for very few of these people, but go ahead.
All right, but the point is, all powers, all just powers of government come from the consent of the governed. At least in theory, you are the one that wrote the tax law. You and every American out there delegated his or her authority to write the tax code. So what is the government supposed to think? I can tell you this. The government assumes that you know that what you wrote and how it applies and what it's supposed to do.
Well,
After
I think
all,
that the
you're
government does
master
think
of
that,
your
Bear.
creation. You're
That's
the
what those
master.
12 people thought. Those 12 people thought that Ian was a bad man that had evaded his taxes, and they sent him to prison.
I was at Ian's
I know you
trial,
were.
the same as
Thank
same
you
as
for coming.
you were. And what my observation was, it was that his attorney did not fight jurisdiction. His attorney left out a lot of presumptions unchallenged. And you know what an unchallenged presumption becomes? It becomes true under the law.
Sure.
And the fact that he didn't challenge those presumptions is a legal error. And again, he's not a lawyer. I keep telling you this. He is an attorney. An attorney is not necessarily a lawyer. A lawyer is not an attorney. A lawyer is one who knows the law. An attorney is one who delegates your agency for representation purposes. For example, an attorney, what do they call it? Attorney, power of attorney, right? So I could have anybody on the street be a power of attorney for my purposes of, let's say, being sick at the hospital for a week, or for whatever reason.
Sure.
They don't have to be lawyers. They have no requirement. There's no requirement for them to actually know the law. The same way that attorneys who represent their clients in court are not really knowledgeable about the law, or if they are, they only know enough or are willing to fight enough as long as it's compatible with the jurisdiction that's presented to them.
Then they go and become a part of the bar and lose all integrity.
Yeah, and then maybe they do that, but again, I'm not going to point fingers, because I know that there's different people in different places in different situations. Some of them are good people as well. I don't exclude that.
I believe I withdrew my consent by choosing to leave the United States government, their jurisdiction. Right, like I left the land that they own. And
no, I'll tell you why you didn't. When I was in Iraq, all right, we saw guys go on missions with
Hold on, Bear.
Bear, I do want to hear more of this.
If you don't mind staying on, I'll talk to you on the break. It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. You can call in. We are having an interesting conversation with Bear Arms about lawful tax avoidance. 603-283-6160 if you have any questions for him. We'll be right back.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
Besides, we just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Former US President Donald Trump is blasting the civil fraud case brought against him in New York. Speaking to reporters after his defense team made its closing arguments, Mr. Trump attacked the New York Attorney General who brought the case, insulted the judge, and declared himself an innocent man.
She's a political hack, the Attorney General. The judge is obviously extremely friendly with the group, and we'll see what happens. I think maybe he may surprise people.
Donald Trump and his adult male children are accused of inflating the value of assets to obtain favourable terms from lenders. Police reportedly responded to a bomb threat at the home of the judge presiding over the case. William Denslow's outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan.
The former president denies wrongdoing and says the case should never have been brought against him. In a statement, New York Attorney General Letitia James said the trial revealed the full scale and scope of fraud committed by Trump. Before the trial began, Judge Arthur Engoron ruled the former president was liable for fraud. Prosecutors are seeking $370 million in damages and for Trump to be barred from doing business in New York. William Denslow in Lower Manhattan.
Consumer prices in the US rose again in December, according to the Labor Department. Costs for things like housing, dining out and car insurance increased more than expected, according to consumer price data that shows inflation is still holding a grip on the US economy. The Labor Department said that prices rose 3.4% in December compared with the year before. But if you strip out volatile food and fuel prices to get a sense of the underlying inflation trend, a core price measure actually dropped from 4% to 3.9%. That shows that while inflation remains faster than usual and bumps are to be expected, it is making progress back towards a normal pace. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission has approved the first ever Bitcoin exchange-traded funds to come out of the US. ETFs are investment funds that will track Bitcoin prices and pave the way for more of the public to buy it. US correspondent Benji Heyer explains.
This marks a massive step for Bitcoin, essentially allowing people to buy an ETF that invests in the cryptocurrency. An ETF is an investment fund that tracks the performance of an asset without owning it, stocks, currency, gold, for example. A Bitcoin ETF, though, opens this world to people or organizations to buy and sell to those with little trading experience. It'll be much easier to own shares of Bitcoin. It may start appearing in mainstream portfolios. The cryptocurrency soared more than 70% in recent months, but it's not endorsed or advocated by the SEC.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Looking today in more detail at the new French Prime Minister. Gabriel Attal was appointed by Emmanuel Macron earlier this week. At 34, he is the youngest person to hold the post in the modern French era. Who is he, and what is he all about? Reporter Peter Allen is in Paris and says Monsieur Attal has been described as President Macron's mini-me.
They're very close indeed. The mini-me claim is absolutely right. Very, very similar bourgeois backgrounds, very privileged young men, both of whom flirted with socialism as students, and are now in this Renaissance government, which I have to say is struggling. It's not got a majority in the National Assembly. President Emmanuel Macron has only ever been elected to be President of France. He needs somebody to go into the National Assembly to speak to all the other MPs, to soak up all the pressure, all the antagonism from the opposition. Emmanuel Macron is a bit of a lame duck at the moment. He feels he's still got lots to do. He'll only be 49 when he finishes this second term, and that will be the end of it. But could Gabriel Attal be his successor as president? It's very possible.
Monsieur Attal is the country's first openly gay prime minister. His predecessor, Elizabeth Bourne, resigned on Monday in a political dispute over immigration. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. After closing arguments in his civil fraud case in New York, former US President Donald Trump attacked the Attorney General who brought the case, insulted the judge, and declared himself an innocent man. Consumer prices in the US rose again in December, according to the Labor Department. And the US Securities and Exchange Commission has approved the first ever Bitcoin exchange-traded funds to come out of the US. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
According to a report released Monday, Americans currently lead the world in compressing big sandwiches into sufficiently biteable sizes, outranking countries such as Germany, Slovenia, and Ukraine in their sheer capacity to squeeze BLTs, meatball subs, and grinders into shapes that will easily and efficiently fit into their open mouths. Researchers pointed out that in series after series of tests, Americans consistently topped international rankings by implementing over 800 pounds per square inch of compressive force on sandwich categories as diverse as banh mi, croque monsieurs, or gyros, rarely hesitating for more than a moment before diving in and pushing the bread together and wedging it into their mouths.
Even in the cases in which Americans failed to sufficiently compress a sandwich and, say, dropped a stray piece of bacon or avocado, they still led the pack on quickly scooping up this topping with their hands and eating it, sometimes even inventively doing so with a stray potato chip or french fry.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. Right now we have Bear Arms on the line, and he is telling us about his new book that he wrote about lawful tax avoidance. And a lot of people hear that and they go, oh no, I don't want to be involved in that. Such as Mark, I think. Well, hold on, I didn't unmute you. Oh, wait, I did. And I find it really interesting. I went to Bear Arms, what would you call it, presentation in Keene about it, and I found it really enlightening. He talked about how he personally used these things, and we're going to talk to him about his new books, and anybody who has any questions about it can call in, which we already do have someone on the line for that. But first, I wanted to tell you guys about ForkFest. Free Talk Live is brought to you by ForkFest, happening June 13th through the 16th at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. ForkFest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival. ForkFest is decentralized, so there is no ticket cost and no one is in charge. For more information and to connect with other attendees, you can visit the unofficial website, forkfest.party. That's forkfest.party. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay.
And Mark Edge.
And bringing Bear Arms back, we did have someone else on the phones who wanted to ask you a question. So, Peter in Virginia. Oh, I guess I just dropped Bear on accident. I didn't know how to do both. But, Peter, just go ahead and ask your question and we'll get Bear back.
Yes. Sorry about any inconvenience that I may have caused with dropping the
totally on me.
Guest. Just maybe not so much a question on Bear, but more so just some personal feedback from just listening to him for the past like 50 minutes or so. I just want to preface by saying I'm very sympathetic with his premise. It's pretty funny how every month, if you get a salary every month or every 2 weeks, you see your paycheck and you see how much goes to the feds, and then the feds have guts to say every year coming up here shortly, right, that hey, you made X amount of money. Forget about the fact that we took some money out of that, right? Your paycheck every month or every 2 weeks throughout the year. Just forget about it. You made X amount. Pay us a lump sum. and that's your income tax if you have to pay. Which it's pretty. No, it's nonsense. It's living in some sort of despotic system. That's my view. But unfortunately, I am also familiar with people like Irwin Schiff. I'm a fan of his son's work. But just my own 2 cents here. So I'm not an accountant or anything. I studied econ in school in George Mason, which is probably the only place you can get free market / Austrian stuff in the U.S. That I'm aware of. But even people like Walter Williams, one of my professors before he passed away, he would tell us, he would lecture us about the unconstitutionality of the income tax. And he would always preface by saying, look, this is just me giving you the history of the income tax. It's not me telling you don't pay it, right? And if you listen to other scholars that actually study this, person that comes to mind is Tom DiLorenzo at Mises Institute. He's done years of work around this topic, the progressive era, the income tax, and he always does that preface, right? That he's not suggesting the audience not pay the income tax, rather he's just explaining how it came about and how pretty retarded the whole thing is. But my recommendation to your audience, which was which was elaborated by one of the hosts here, was don't take the chance, right? Don't take the chance and not pay the income tax, because I guarantee you the cost of doing so outweighs the cost of giving up a portion of your income. Right.
What are the costs of not doing so? So when you're weighing this out, and I tend to agree with you. I would rather pay $20,000 the United States government than to spend, a year in prison. As a matter of fact, I go so far as to double that number. I might even triple that number, depending on what the circumstances. It's the sodomy that bothers me the most. But
in prison.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
I'm told that that's what happens.
Well, didn't you spend some time there already?
Yeah.
Yeah, no sodomy that time.
So let's get let me just kind of condense this to a question or
Gotcha.
at least a comment for our host, or not host, but caller Bear. So basically, you're saying you may agree with him, but you wouldn't want people to risk it, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I guess like a good question, I guess, if that's what is needed is, what incentive do regular people have, right? Let's not assume the audience of the show. My assumption is the audience here is a lot smarter than my next door neighbor, who may be a moron, right? So what incentive does this moron have?
Okay, so Bear Arm, sorry I hung up on you. I didn't mean to do that. But Bear Arms, did you hear the question?
I believe we're trying to establish a risk-reward benefit sort of thing. Is that basically what you're asking about?
Yeah, and he said basically what is like the average person's incentive to do this versus what could happen to them.
Well, I'll tell you what it is. The average person works about 40 years and pays, if they pay federal income tax, anywhere from 20 to maybe 30% on average. So if you're paying like 25% of your labor into the federal income tax, and you work 40 years, then by definition you're enslaved for 10. Correct? I personally refuse to do that. I refuse to go on the knee. And I'm going to fight it, and I've been winning so far for 7 years. And plus, and the thing is, if everybody knew what I understand and everybody did what I do, and again, not just knowing the law, knowing how to apply the law on paper, but also in what we call the operation of law, which I wanted to touch on as well, so the audience can read about it in detail and study it for themselves. But that's basically the cost, and the the cost of not having this knowledge is 25% of your life's labor. That's too high of a price for me to pay personally. I wouldn't even give them 5%, you know. And that's because I've done almost 15 years service, actual service, right? Government service, in the military. And I understand that, that I'm just not willing to let my money go to causes which I don't support, and in an amount that exceeds 10% for that matter, and it's like 25% of your entire life. Are you kidding me? No, hell no, right? That's my opinion. That's my feeling on this. Now, let's go back to that question that Mark had before the last break, which was like something along the lines of how he decided to get off the jurisdiction of the United States, and therefore he is no longer subject to the tax. Well, I'm sorry, but that is actually not true. And I'll tell you why. Because in my experience, when I was in Iraq, there were a lot of contractors, and not all the contractors were American. And when they got paid by KBR, Kellogg, Brown and Root, or whatever it is, they had taxes taken out of their paychecks just like Americans. They had to pay a portion of their tax to the IRS. They had to file IRS paperwork. In fact, there were even like IRS. It was even an IRS office that I remember on base, I believe. And the point is, it's not who you are or where you go in this world. What it is what you do and whose property you receive or whose property rights you exercise.
Well, if we're going to talk about income tax specifically, I want to talk about the foreign income exclusion.
And thank you for the question, Peter, by the way.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And that is, what that means is, A, you must pay FICA. Now, FICA is your Medicare and Social Security. That's not income tax. It's something different than income tax, but it looks like income tax because it's taken out of your it's taken out of your paycheck.
It's a portion of your presumed income.
It's right. It's a portion of your presumed income in so much as it comes off of the form you fill out. And the United States government does say that you are responsible for filling out a form for them. There's no doubt about that. And I think that's a real problem. I think it's a violation of the 13th Amendment, which is, involuntary servitude. Why should I have to fill out your paperwork? But that's a different point than the 16th Amendment. But the last thing, and this is very important, is I think it's about $108,000, which is more than well over 50% of Americans. In order to, if you're outside the United States for 330 days a year, or you are you're a resident of another country or whatever the situation is, then you don't have to pay about on your first $108,000, you don't have to pay federal income tax. Now, federal income tax is a specific number, and personally, I have not paid it very much, but I certainly have paid FICA and small business tax. I think a small business tax or something like that. Self-employment tax. That's what it's called. And these kind of things. So go ahead.
So you had mentioned that this is a violation of the 13th Amendment, which is no slavery or involuntary servitude, correct?
Right.
Now, I'll tell you why it's not. I'll tell you why you actually volunteered into it. And I'll tell you who's bearing false witness against you. Again, it's a person who you work for who is actually not government, who fills out these forms, which, by the way, are called information forms. And if you have any familiarity with criminal law,
I haven't worked for. I've been self-employed for many years, 20, I guess.
So when you fill out your form, and by the way, you do claim self-employment. Is that correct?
I have claimed self-employment tax in the past. Yeah.
All right.
I hate it, but I do it because it's just a bad deal. Social Security is a bad deal. It's a much better idea to take the money that you paid into Social Security, pop it in an index matching fund, and go from there.
Yeah, but hold on. Before you bear false witness against yourself, do you know what the meaning of the term net earnings from self-employment means?
Well,
If you don't,
it sounds like the earnings that you made from self-employment netted down.
It does sound like that, but let me tell you what it really means. Okay, you can read that at section 1402. It means the gross income derived from any trade or business. Now, keep in mind what that means. A trade or business is then defined at section 7701 as the performance of the functions of a public office. So the moment you claim self-employment is the moment IRS knows that you've just volunteered into the system by failing to read the law that you wrote yourself through the delegation of your representatives. You see what I'm saying?
You brought up one thing that caught my attention there. Is there not a law that specifically says you must fill out one of their 1040 forms or some kind of IRS paperwork every year as a U.S. citizen?
There is no law. And I'll tell you why there is no law. Because the law is not in words, it's in operation. It's called the operation of law. So let me ask you this. If you wrote down that you're self-employed and that you have net earnings from self-employment, why do you expect them to apply that definition to anything else than what you wrote down and testified to? Because when you wrote that down, you testified to the performance of the functions of a public office. That's something you said on your own. That's not something someone else compelled you to do. Do you see what I'm saying? And if you
it's full on entrapment, right? They give you a piece of paper. They say, "Here, fill this piece of paper out, and if you do it wrong, prison, pound you."
Do you hear anything?
Look, again, when you succumb to coercion and browbeating and that kind of thing, then you give up your rights without actually a fight, then they have you. All right. On the other hand, if you say to them, listen, I didn't perform the functions of a public office, therefore I did not perform or have a trade or business. And if I didn't have a trade or business, I did not receive gross income derived from a trade or business, which means I had no net income from self-employment as defined in section 1402. Therefore, none of this stuff applies to me.
Well, I feel like I can't count on a jury of my peers to...
You're not going to get a jury. I can guarantee you that. You're not going to get a jury if you take care of this administratively. Now, the thing that bothers me most is, again, syntactic ambiguity and the fact that people do not read the law and find out the words they are using. They are using common words for you to deceive yourself, for you to entrap yourself. And once you know those common words and you step away from them, then you don't have to worry about it. What Jesus told Peter, Peter asked him, who goes to heaven, right? And do you know what Jesus said? He said, only those who are as innocent as children can attain the kingdom of God. And what that means is that you have to use words that you don't know, that you didn't know before you were like an 8-year-old. For example, my mom goes to work to make a living. Okay, that's different from what IRS technical words would mean. My mom receives remuneration for services as an employee for her employer. Those are technical terms. Do you understand? When you use technical terms, and when you fail to understand that those technical terms sound like ordinary words that you use in day-to-day life, then you have volunteered into their system. It is not a Fifth Amendment violation for you to bear witness against yourself and sign a tax return. It is not a 13th Amendment violation against involuntary servitude. It is because you have failed your own duty to know the meaning of the words. And remember, you're the one that created those documents. I mean,
well, that's not using, English like a child. We didn't create the document. See, this is the part that gets me a little irritated with it. It's like Jay Noon in the break was saying, well, the thing about it is the Constitution gives them the authority over persons, and you're basically claiming.
Not what I said.
Well,
the Constitution doesn't give them any
Let me
authority.
finish really fast. So you're saying that the Constitution doesn't give them authority over regular people, men, but once you claim to be like a citizen, okay, then they have the authority, right?
But when you claim to be a U.S. citizen specifically, yeah, because a U.S. citizen is a second class of citizen that basically didn't really exist until 1864.
But here's my thing about it. I literally didn't write the laws like you're saying, Bear, and I literally didn't decide I was a citizen, U.S. citizen, and I mean, like, that's the part that bothers me about it. It's like, if we were just going to use this, sorry, if we're just going to go strictly on, and I'm not really saying you're wrong or anything, it's just like, I'm just trying to get to what lots of people are probably thinking about this.
If I may, Bonnie, if I may kind of prop you up a little bit and say, listen, Bonnie, you're not the one that wrote it. You are the one whose sovereignty was extended, whose power was delegated to write it. In fact, you are the power that generates all those laws and statutes and codes. And guess what? And because you did that, they have presumed that you understood and know everything that's in there. So all 3.8 million words in the Internal Revenue Code, they assume that since you're the power that generated it, they assume that we the people know what's written there. Now, as regards to the word person, that word person is used in many different legal texts, and it's defined in many different ways. One of which, under the both the 1099s, a person, and that's 26 United States Code 6041A, a person is defined to mean any government unit and any agent or instrumentality thereof. Also see 6045. That's section 6045. So when you use the word person inappropriately, for example, on a W-9 form, they figure you understand that you are a government unit or an instrumentality or a unit or instrumental agency thereof. They presume you understand what you write on the paper, even though it's far beyond the average man to know these things. And that's why I've summed it up in the document that I have, so that you would stay away from using common terms in this syntactic ambiguity, this logical fallacy we call equivocation, to play into their hands. You see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, and I, for example, one of the things I do, and I've had some help from a guy named Christopher Gronsky on this, is when I work for corporations. So I've worked for some large construction companies in the past, and recently I've worked for some property management companies. I actually have a modified substitute W-9, and then I attach a W-8 to it, which is an affidavit of foreign status. These are IRS documents. And I give them to their accounting department or, whoever is going to pay me. And sometimes they scoff at it and say, what am I supposed to do with this? And I say, well, if you don't know what to do with it, you should probably call the IRS and ask him what to do with it. And it goes through fine. They pay me.
Right. And here's the other thing. I've done contract work as well as a 1099 guy, right? So here's what I write to the HR person. And this is, by the way, this is on page 16 of the book. Or 17 rather. I asked them, before I can sign your W-9 form, I have to request that the company disclose the following to me in writing. Number one, is your company performing the functions of a public office? And number two, is your company a government unit, agency, or institution?
We love you so much, Joa.
Well, it looks like
you're the best, Joa.
It looks like we're out of time for this segment, Bear, and I am going to put this on at least the Free Talk Live Twitter because our Mastodon is down. More coming up at 603-283-6160.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing to be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Former US President Donald Trump is blasting the civil fraud case brought against him in New York. Speaking to reporters after his defense team made its closing arguments, Mr. Trump attacked the New York Attorney General who brought the case, insulted the judge, and declared himself an innocent man.
She's a political hack, the Attorney General. The judge is obviously extremely friendly with the group, and we'll see what happens. I think maybe he may surprise people.
Donald Trump and his adult male children are accused of inflating the value of assets to obtain favourable terms from lenders. Police reportedly responded to a bomb threat at the home of the judge presiding over the case. William Denslow's outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan.
The former president denies wrongdoing and says the case should never have been brought against him. In a statement, New York Attorney General Letitia James said the trial revealed the full scale and scope of fraud committed by Trump. Before the trial began, Judge Arthur Engoron ruled the former president was liable for fraud. Prosecutors are seeking $370 million in damages and for Trump to be barred from doing business in New York. William Denslow in Lower Manhattan.
Consumer prices in the US rose again in December, according to the Labor Department. Costs for things like housing, dining out and car insurance increased more than expected, according to consumer price data that shows inflation is still holding a grip on the US economy. The Labour Department said that prices rose 3.4% in December compared with the year before. But if you strip out volatile food and fuel prices to get a sense of the underlying inflation trend, a core price measure actually dropped from 4% to 3.9%. That shows that while inflation remains faster than usual and bumps are to be expected, it is making progress back towards a normal pace. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission has approved the first ever Bitcoin exchange-traded funds to come out of the US. ETFs are investment funds that will track Bitcoin prices and pave the way for more of the public to buy it. US correspondent Benji Hire explains.
This marks a massive step for Bitcoin, essentially allowing people to buy an ETF that invests in the cryptocurrency. An ETF is an investment fund that tracks the performance of an asset without owning it, stocks, currency, gold, for example. A Bitcoin ETF, though, opens this world to people or organizations to buy and sell to those with little trading experience. It'll be much easier to own shares of Bitcoin. It may start appearing in mainstream portfolios. The cryptocurrency soared more than 70% in recent months, but it's not endorsed or advocated by the SEC.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And I would like to thank Anthony Mitchell-Brink for being a platinum level amplifier, and I might have butchered that last name, but I really do appreciate you being a platinum level amplifier, Anthony. And what does that mean? That means that he went to amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com and is now helping to advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. And we really appreciate that. So thank you so much to Anthony. And if you'd like to become an amplifier, you can go to amps, that's amps.freetalklive.com. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Jay.
And Mark.
And I'm going to go straight to the calls. We have Alu on the line. Alu, what's on your mind in New Hampshire?
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
Just removed my Bluetooth. There's a bill among all the other bills relating to secession. There's another bill tomorrow being heard in the Criminal Justice Committee in the New Hampshire House of Representatives, proposed by our friend we all love, Matt Santonastasso, and it would essentially repeal the red flag law. Contrary to popular opinion, nobody knows that New Hampshire actually has some pretty bad red flag gun confiscation. No, we're not the most statist state, but all states besides Kansas. So like 49 states seem to have it, and it's called restraining orders. So in the restraining order statute is a de facto red flag law where there's ex parte, zero due process gun confiscation. So this would kind of reform that and add some due process into that. So that hearing is tomorrow at 9:30 in the State House, but also you can put in your testimony with either just supporting the bill, or you could write whatever blurb you want online at the State House website. So currently the anti-gun people, the pro-red flag law, gun confiscation people are outnumbering those who support the bill by like 100 to 3. So I encourage anyone who supports due process or Second Amendment rights or anything like that, or liberty or fairness, to go and put in their testimony and or go to the State House tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for reminding us of that. I'm going to it. I'm going to the 9:30 a.m. secession bill one too, and I'm just going to hop in there. I'll have my little brother with me, actually helping to man the camera, so that's good. And I'll be able to hop into the other one because it's a really important bill. For anyone who doesn't understand what all means by the red flag laws, the restraining order, gun rights taking away situation, it's really bad. It's like New Hampshire has pretty good gun laws, like maybe the best in the country, if not
The best. I think the best, or tied for best.
And we still have it to where if somebody's girlfriend is mad at them and accuses them of hitting her or something stupid like that, well, you'll just get your guns taken away without any due process. The cops will come to your house and say, well, your girlfriend has accused you of hitting, you would just wait for your day in court to get your guns back. We're taking all guns in your house. It's what the judge said. It's crazy.
Yep, that's really, really bad. So come out and support that, and a lot of other bills. And you could just follow libertyblock.com because we write about all these bills. There are a lot of other similar bills in the Criminal Justice Committee and other good bills, some very good ones, some bad ones. Matt Santonastasso and Jason Gerhard proposed a bunch of really good ones. So I'll be supporting all those, but hopefully tomorrow we'll all be at the State House testifying on a whole bunch of good bills. Now, I got a letter from Mr. Ian Freeman today, and it informed me that this year we could be a little more optimistic about the secession bills, not only because of the BLC ruling that you can't kick him out of the House for supporting independence, but also because two of the people on the State Federal Relations Committee that's going to hear this bill, I think, are Tom Mannion and Brandon Finney, two pro-liberty people who I would think are pro-independence. So if 2 out of 20 are supportive, whereas last time none of them really supported it, even though a few of them told me personally they would.
Yeah.
Two of them told me personally.
Oh, yeah.
What's her name? The lady who...
I can't remember. I know her face, but I can't remember her name.
Well, her husband was the, what's it called, guy from the thing,
the thing in Nevada. Yeah. I know who you're talking about. So there's a state rep whose husband went to prison for 5 years because he was standing with Eamon Bundy, right? Wasn't it, Alu?
Yep. So her she was cool. We spoke for a while after the hearing. She was supportive. So she and I think Bill Marsh or Bill something, I forget the last name, but one of the other guys in the committee told me he would support it. So at least two of them told me they would vote yes, and they all voted no. But this time we have like Brandon Finney and Tom Mannion, two people who are pretty tough with backbones who support liberty. So hopefully they would receive us a little better. And I think it will be a lot better this time. So hopefully we'll all flood the place tomorrow for the independence bills.
And we really don't want there to be a smaller turnout than last time because there's more support for it this time. And I feel like the Free Staters are really the only ones who are going to stand up and support this bill. And even though a lot of natives really like support independence, Ian and I have went around the state interviewing people, we've had hundreds of just regular Republicans tell us, oh, yeah, I totally support that, and here's my reasons. A lot of time it has to do with, like, oh, something that, you know, maybe they have different reasons than Ian and I, but there's tons of support for secession, and we want there to be a large turnout again to show that to these people who are going to be voting on whether or not to recommend it to the House when the House votes on it.
And I'm still waiting for.
Hold on, is the House voting on secession, or are they voting on a thing that goes on the ballot to allow people to vote on secession?
It's
it's a
the
CACR.
latter. Yep, it's going to give. So they would be voting to recommend to the House to allow the people to vote on an amendment to the Constitution that would say, we, the people of New Hampshire, secede from the Union if the federal government hits $40 trillion of debt.
Now, I think this is very interesting. Now, I don't support, as a former Granite Stater, if I got to vote on it, I would say, no, secession's not a good idea. But I kind of like the idea of putting this, if they hit $40 trillion in deficit. Now, you may have to move it to 45 or 50 by the time this gets on the ballot. They could have blown past that number. But either way, if you give an ultimatum, it says to the federal government, hey, you can't create this much debt. Otherwise, you're going to have to deal with this ugly legal ramification. And I think that is a pretty cool idea.
So, Alu, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if this is a bill that I read the text of a little while ago, it says basically to succeed from the United States of America, correct?
I think so.
Okay. I don't like the wording of that. It specifically should include maybe it should be United States of America and United States, because they're two separate entities. The United States of America is a federation of sovereign nation states. The United States is specifically the District of Columbia, territories, and possessions. There is Supreme Court ruling that states that, for example, New Hampshire is foreign to the United States, just like New Hampshire is foreign to Vermont. Vermont is a separate nation state within a federation called the United States. I don't know the site for this Supreme Court ruling, but also with respect to the federal debt, that money is actually a debt of the United States, not the United States of America. And there's just a lot of, screwing around with wordplay, and people don't really understand what things mean.
Yeah, so come out to the hearing and propose that.
Oh, yeah, that could be amended.
Yeah, it says declaring independence from the United States of America in the titles of the bill and stuff, but in the actual bill, it just says United States. So it is interesting.
Okay, good. It does say United States. Good. Because that is, I think, the real way to go about this. And I actually just wrote an email the other night about how I have 9 irons in the fire right now. So I can't come to actually testify tomorrow. I was at the State House testifying yesterday. I am just buried in work and things to do, and I have a lot of court actions going on right now. But anyways, the thing is there's a corporation called the State of New Hampshire that was created. I don't know, it was 1889 or something, and that was essentially chartered under the United States Corporation. And quite simply, I believe the solution to this is dissolving such corporation. And I think another solution to this is individuals just declaring that they are without the United States, such as I have done when I got my when I did my passport application, and to stop acting, talking, walking, and signing documents stating they're United States citizens unless they declare that they are, a specific United States citizen that's defined in a 1950-something court ruling called the Hooven-Allison case. So if you just look that up, Hooven-Allison definition of United States. I'm not super prepared to have this discussion now, but there is a lot of alternatives. This is something that I should participate in probably more because I happen to know a lot about it. Christopher Gronsky knows a lot about this stuff. But the bottom line is the United States is a hostile, military invasion that has invaded this land we call New Hampshire. And that's really the bottom line. And there's no constitutional authority for the United States corporation to do what it's doing, here in New Hampshire, whether it's taxes, whether it's arresting people. And we also have, this kind of segues to another thing. There's an affidavit notice process thing I've been following. We have actually like 60 or 75 legislators here in New Hampshire that are on board with this thing, this notice process. This notice process is being headed up by a man named David Jose. And if you want to check him out on Twitter, I would recommend people just click on his last Twitter space and just listen to it. They're like 4-hour-long Twitter spaces. If you want to get to the meat of it, just fast forward like 20 minutes. But his Twitter handle is @RealDaveCares4U, and that's the number 4 and the letter U at the end. And Leah Cushman actually did has addressed the legislature now multiple times on their constitutional authority and telling them not to step outside their constitutional authority. Yesterday, a fella named Andrew Noyes, he testified before a committee about the election thing, about some election committee about election machines, and stating that the Constitution does not give him any authority to have digital electronic machines, voting machines, that humans are supposed to count these votes. And so the voting machines are, they are not, constitutionally sound. There's no constitutional authority for them. And essentially the government is operating outside its constitutional authority. And if anybody wants to see...
The federal government doesn't have much in the Constitution about voting. It leaves voting to the state, right?
Right.
And the state decides that.
Right. What Andrew Noyes testified about yesterday, he's talking about the state constitution. There is no provision within the New Hampshire, the Constitution for New Hampshire state, for there to be electronic voting machines or voting machines. All votes are supposed to be counted by people. And one of the guys... the lawyers, one of the people on this committee answered back with, well, the largest voting district in the country is Derry, New Hampshire, 18,000 votes. He's like, how are we supposed to count those votes, by hand? And Andrew Noyes' response was, well, amend the New Hampshire Constitution then if you want to use electronic voting machines. But as we know, the electronic voting machines, they should be spitting out a receipt for every ballot that goes through it of who is checked off on that ballot. They have a little printer on them. They're made by the same company that makes ATM machines, Diebold Corporation, and several others. So there's no reason that they don't spit out an actual receipt, and that receipt should be evidence of who you voted for. But we know they don't want people counting the votes. They want machines doing it because. And machines that have proprietary software that nobody can view except for the companies that creates those machines. So it's all ripe for corruption right from the beginning. But what I was going to say, if anybody wants to check out, like for example, there's a notice on my website right now at the top of the page. That's jnoon.com. If you want to go check out that notice. It is a notice to investigate DCYF. And this is an example of one of these notices that you can fill out. It's a jot form link. And you can, send it. I mean, the committee to investigate, the Health and Human Services Committee has gotten hundreds of these notices already. And there is going to be a committee to investigate DCYF happening very soon. Well, within the next couple months, we have a few organization sessions that we got to attend first. But yeah, things are happening. There is a good remedy out there, and Alu, I want to thank you for your efforts in this. You've been very consistent on writing about this, telling people about this, and thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Alu that helped with the idea for the red flag law, or amendment. I mean, not amendment. Bill. There we go. Not the red flag bill, but the anti-red flag bill. There we go.
Yeah, interestingly, just a heads up, because a lot of the people who opposed it on their remote testimony online said that they don't support it because OLS, as written, they messed it up big time, and it repeals the part the part of the law that says if you violate a protective order, cops can take your guns. And that makes sense to a lot more people, whereas what Matt intended to do, and he's going to fix with an amendment tomorrow, hopefully, is repeal the part that initially authorizes police to take your guns by red flag law kind of confiscation when the order is initially approved by a judge.
Okay, interesting. So
bringing it up, I think it's worth pointing it out that if you have been convicted of a felony, New Hampshire is actually one of the worst states in the union for you possessing a weapon. I have a felony conviction, and I've looked into this quite a bit, and they have, at least at one point, and I don't know if this has been recently changed, but it was illegal for me to carry a billies, which is a stick, a dirk, which is an ice pick, and all kinds. And I've seen people get convicted for simply having knives, and this is, it makes it a difficult sell to say that New Hampshire has the greatest gun laws, except if you've ever run afoul of the government.
So a hay hook looks just like an ice pick. I wonder, Mark, is that why I never got you to stack hay with me? Because you couldn't handle
Seems
the
like
hay
a lot
hook?
of work. No, I have picked up ice picks in the state of New Hampshire. I'm willing to admit it here on the air.
I think Jason Gerhardt has a bill, I believe, this session to improve the ability of convicted persons after they serve their time in incarceration and a sentence to get all their civil rights back, including firearms rights.
I hope that that's the case. I'd love to hear more about it. It was because I went in front of the Criminal Justice Committee and spoke to these folks, and it passed, but then in the dark of night, it somehow got failed somehow. I don't know what happened, but it went from sure this is a good idea to gone.
House Bill 144, and it was already killed by the House on the 4th.
Damn it!
What was that one for? Sorry.
Well, because Mark Edge didn't testify in time, Jason's bill was killed.
I don't live in the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah, I didn't realize. Wow, the House already voted on it. ITL 297 to 63.
You can actually now submit online testimony, and I noticed that you can put your address in, and they have options for outside of New Hampshire. So maybe they won't take your what you say as seriously, but you could still put your online submission in from another state.
Okay. Well, I went in and testified in front of the Criminal Justice Committee. I took the time off of work and went and did it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate all you guys do. I'm going to run. Love you guys.
Thank you so much, Alu, for the call. And thank you for the reminder. That's 9:30 tomorrow at the Legislative Office building. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to testify at hopefully both of them. I think I don't understand how they're allowed to have two at one time, because it's like, I hope I'll be able to testify at both. Sounds kind of complicated.
Just sign up for them. At the committee hearing I was at yesterday, there was 7 different bills they were hearing in that particular committee
But
meeting.
they're different rooms. That's the problem.
Oh, well.
So I hadn't dealt with that yet.
Yeah, well, hopefully they're not running at the same exact time. That might be, the issue for you then.
They just start at the same time, but I think one's going to have a lot more people in it than the other, so maybe I'll just get lucky. I don't know. If you don't even know what we're talking about at all, in New Hampshire, the way that things work is you have a bill, and the bill has been created, but it has to go through a committee first, and then the committee votes. Well, they hear testimony, and then they vote on whether or not to recommend it to the House. Then even if they don't recommend it to the House could vote yes on it anyway, but they're more likely to listen to the opinion of the committee who heard all the testimony. And tomorrow, just that first part, the committee hearing testimony for multiple really important bills is happening tomorrow. And Alu called in about the one that would repeal some really bad red flag laws that take away your gun rights if somebody accuses you of something and gets a restraining order against you. And also one that would let the people vote on a constitutional amendment that would let us vote on whether or not to secede when the United States debt hits $40 trillion.
So there's actually another bill I'd like to bring up.
Tomorrow?
This bill is on January 18th at 10 a.m. The committee will be. Anyways, this is House Bill 1 10112, so 1012, exempting from criminal penalties certain parenting decisions intended to encourage a child's independence and freedom. It's having its hearing before the House Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee on Thursday, January 18th at 10 a.m. Anyone wishes to testify may do so by appearing at the hearing Legislative Office Building at 33 North State Street in Concord. The hearing will be held in room 202-204. So they basically open up the room to, two rooms into one. And you can, send text to the bill, can be read here. There's a website I got. But this is basically the bill to amend the child, in endangering the welfare of a child would to be charged with that, criminally charged with that particular statute, would require that the child have actually been injured. And it also applies some definitions to the terms, or it strikes the words that aren't defined in this bill, I believe. I might be a little wrong.
Endangered, I think, was.
Well,
we used to jump our bikes over this ditch when I was a kid, and it's a big ditch, and we'd build these ramps, elaborate ramps. And if the jump didn't kill you, the landing would, right? It was it was dangerous, and we did it all the time. It was like what I looked forward to after school when it was still light out at night. And I'm just wondering, is my mother a child abuser for having let me do such a thing? Because I never had to go to the hospital, but there were boys there who did. And, I certainly got injured because, that's how it was. How would that work with this law?
Well, from what I understand, they wouldn't be able to charge you criminally. The thing is they're charging parents, caretakers, uncles, grandparents all over the country with this particular legislation. Not only in New Hampshire, it's happening in New Hampshire too, for things like, in some places they've charged people, parents for, telling their kid, not forcing their kids to mask. New York State, I believe. In New York State, they've actually gone after a whole bunch of Amish over allowing kids to do farm chores. In Pennsylvania, they've gone after Amish for allowing kids to do farm chores. And what it does is it basically in this endangering the welfare of a child bill, there's a term called I forget the term off the top of my head, but anyways, it would just, there would be no criminal action. Right now, there's basically criminal action for under this statute for something that could hypothetically happen. And what's happening with this bill is it's being used all over the country as just another weaponized statute to go after political opponents. And quite like my wife, with our situation, which, she has a jury trial for this, on January 30th at Concord Superior Court.
The 30th. Okay, I kept thinking it was the 21st. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Never, ever send a follow-up email asking, "Did you get my email?" Email 101. If it didn't bounce back undeliverable, it got where you sent it. And avoid transmedia pestering, like calling to ask, "Did you get my email?" or emailing to say, "I left you a voicemail." If your emails and voicemails aren't being acknowledged, your problem isn't technology, it's technique. Is your message concise and understandable? Have you boiled it down to seem as relevant as possible to the recipient? In other words, is it the opposite of spam or junk mail? All of this really matters if you're a job seeker. But even if you're not, with money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Former US President Donald Trump is blasting the civil fraud case brought against him in New York. Speaking to reporters after his defense team made its closing arguments, Mr. Trump attacked the New York Attorney General who brought the case, insulted the judge, and declared himself an innocent man.
She's a political hack, the Attorney General. The judge is obviously extremely friendly with the group, and we'll see what happens. I think maybe he may surprise people.
Donald Trump and his adult male children are accused of inflating the value of assets to obtain favourable terms from lenders. Police reportedly responded to a bomb threat at the home of the judge presiding over the case. William Denslow's outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan.
The former president denies wrongdoing and says the case should never have been brought against him. In a statement, New York Attorney General Letitia James said the trial revealed the full scale and scope of fraud committed by Trump. Before the trial began, Judge Arthur Engoron ruled the former president was liable for fraud. Prosecutors are seeking $370 million in damages and for Trump to be barred from doing business in New York. William Denslow in Lower Manhattan.
Consumer prices in the US rose again in December, according to the Labor Department. Costs for things like housing, dining out and car insurance increased more than expected, according to consumer price data that shows inflation is still holding a grip on the US economy. The Labour Department said that prices rose 3.4% in December compared with the year before. But if you strip out volatile food and fuel prices to get a sense of the underlying inflation trend, a core price measure actually dropped from 4% to 3.9%. That shows that while inflation remains faster than usual and bumps are to be expected, it is making progress back towards a normal pace. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission has approved the first ever Bitcoin exchange-traded funds to come out of the US. ETFs are investment funds that will track Bitcoin prices and pave the way for more of the public to buy it. US correspondent Benji Hire explains.
This marks a massive step for Bitcoin, essentially allowing people to buy an ETF that invests in the cryptocurrency. An ETF is an investment fund that tracks the performance of an asset without owning it, stocks, currency, gold, for example. A Bitcoin ETF, though, opens this world to people or organizations to buy and sell to those with little trading experience. It'll be much easier to own shares of Bitcoin. It may start appearing in mainstream portfolios. The cryptocurrency soared more than 70% in recent months, but it's not endorsed or advocated by the SEC.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today in more detail at the new French Prime Minister. Gabriel Attal was appointed by Emmanuel Macron earlier this week. At 34, he is the youngest person to hold the post in the modern French era. Who is he, and what is he all about? Reporter Peter Allen is in Paris and says Monsieur Attal has been described as President Macron's mini-me.
They're very close indeed. The mini-me claim is absolutely right. Very, very similar bourgeois backgrounds, very privileged young men, both of whom flirted with socialism as students, and are now in this Renaissance government, which I have to say is struggling. It's not got a majority in the National Assembly. President Emmanuel Macron has only ever been elected to be President of France. He needs somebody to go into the National Assembly to speak to all the other MPs, to soak up all the pressure, all the antagonism from the opposition. Emmanuel Macron is a bit of a lame duck at the moment. He feels he's still got lots to do. He'll only be 49 when he finishes this second term, and that will be the end of it. But could Gabriel Attal be his successor as president? It's very possible.
Monsieur Attal is the country's first openly gay prime minister. His predecessor, Elizabeth Bourne, resigned on Monday in a political dispute over immigration. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. After closing arguments in his civil fraud case in New York, former US President Donald Trump attacked the Attorney General who brought the case, insulted the judge and declared himself an innocent man. Consumer prices in the US rose again in December, according to the Labor Department. And the US Securities and Exchange Commission has approved the first ever Bitcoin exchange-traded funds to come out of the US. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. According to a Stanford University study released Wednesday, there is no logical reason why planes are able to fly. Reiterating that they fully understand the concepts of lift, thrust, and propulsion, lead physicists told reporters they were still unable to reasonably explain how a large 500,000-pound object is capable of staying up in the air without falling.
We've come up with several theories, including wind propulsion, some sort of gravity suspension effect, also the possibility that the clouds pull the plane skyward. But, beyond that, just don't understand how a large metal tube could just kind of float in the air like that. And it's going at like 500 miles per hour, which means that when I'm on a plane, I'm also going 500 miles per hour. That's crazy. Why is my hair blowing back and forth?
The Stanford team added they plan to devote the next 2 years to a new study on why telephones can hear. In other news, an urban planner is stuck in traffic of his own design, and a kid screams behind a passenger during an entire plane crash. Visit theonion.com/newsbeat for more.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Talk Live, talk radio that you control. And that number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight on Free Talk Live, it's me, Bonnie.
Jay.
And Mark Edge.
And Jay, you had something you wanted to tell the listeners about Anarchapulco?
Yes, I want to encourage the everybody to check out anarchapulco.com and possibly come down to the 2024 Anarchapulco. They have branded it as Anarchapulco Reborn. Freedom is rising. This event is from February 11th to February 16th, the main event. It's going to be at the beautiful Secret Garden that, according to the last video I've watched, it looks like it's recovering quite well. They've done a lot of work down there. Anyways, this event is going to host a whole bunch of speakers, like Max Egan, for example, is going to be there. Marjorie Wildcraft, the Bee Lady. I don't know if people ever watch her, but she actually just did a documentary about the psyop of the guy's name is just slipping my mind for a minute there. The guy that Derek Chauvin choked to death.
George Floyd.
So she's doing a whole documentary about the George Floyd psyop, which I read a little bit about that the other day. That's pretty interesting.
Is she the bee lady because she's like a beekeeper?
Yes.
Cool.
Yep. From what I understand. So anyways, and there's a whole bunch of others. I'm actually getting more and more excited about this. I just joined the Whova app and started looking at that last night. And there's a whole bunch of awesome people that aren't even speakers that are just attendees coming from all over the world, to this thing. It looks like it's shaping up to be a really awesome event. So, and if you want to buy, if you buy tickets and you use coupon code J, that's JAY, you will get a 10% discount at anarchapulco.com. Myself, my wife, and my kids will be there, and I'm definitely doing some kid workshops. I'm also hoping we can pull off a blacksmithing workshop where we're working on that. But I'm going to be presenting on why people should be investing in our posterity. Hope to see you there.
And that's code J, right?
Coupon code J at anarchopoco.com/tickets.
I hope that anybody from the show who wants to go is able to go. That would be really cool. I've never been to Anarchapulco, but all I've ever heard about it is it's really like fun and it looks really cool. And if you've never been around a bunch of libertarians or anarchists, you would probably really enjoy that. Mark's been.
Yeah, I had a really great time the 4 or 5 times that I've gone. It was a great event. I haven't been since COVID, but I'm very interested.
So, Mark, you brought in a story about our very own co-host and my husband, Ian Freeman, and his restitution hearing being canceled. Now, we don't have any extra information about this, and there are going to be a lot of questions left unanswered for the listeners, unfortunately, but this incompetent person did write an article about it and with a bunch of errors in it. And you have the article for us, Mark.
You point out the errors as I go because I feel like Damian Fisher's tried to be as fair on this as he could be throughout the I guess a couple of years that he's been covering it. But yeah, I mean, I don't think everything's entirely accurate.
Right.
Then again, I've had a lot of stories written about me, and none of them have been entirely accurate. After selling Bitcoin, I should give the website, nhjournal.com. This is written by Damian Fisher. Freeman makes deal with feds on crypto scam restitution. Now, I think it's true, although Ian committed no scams, to my mind. It is true that the jury found him guilty of it.
Well, no, they didn't. They found him guilty of money laundering, running an unlicensed money transmitting business, but not scamming these people and not being a part of a scam. That would be different. It'd be like fraud or something.
I think that the money laundering was given, that he got that charge for being sort of what, the jury perceived as him setting up a system that allowed the scammers that, willingly participated with the scammers and allowed the scammers to do what they wanted, I think is what the impression they got. Now, is it true? No, I was there every step of the way, and it simply wasn't true. After selling Bitcoin to dozens of elderly victims of online romance scams, Free Keen's Ian Freeman agreed to a restitution deal with federal prosecutors. And I would like to say that I was there when Ian would ask questions of these elderly victims, and they would tell him lies. Like they would try very hard to get past whatever screening he had.
One might even say they scammed him.
Right. Well, they certainly told him something was inaccurate and then, lied some more on the stand, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
A hearing set for Monday in the U.S. District Court in Concord was canceled at the last minute as Freeman's legal team and federal prosecutors came to terms. Mark Sisti, Freeman's lawyer, declined to comment on the deal. Now, I really wish I knew what this was all about, because I don't know the specifics of it, but I'm very curious because, Ian's been sentenced to 8 years. He has 2 years probation and was fined, was it $45,000, Bonnie?
The fine, I don't remember. Maybe that sounds about right. It definitely wasn't $100,000. It was less than $100,000 for the fine.
It was like 40 or 50, somewhere in that range. Cannot discuss at this time, Sisti said. Judge Joseph LaPlante was considering an order that Freeman pay back millions to the scam victims who bought Bitcoin from Freeman and his cryptocurrency exchanges as part of the romance scams. Evidence about Freeman's role in the scams was expected to be part of Monday's hearing. And I couldn't help but yesterday when I was walking through a supermarket and I saw that big kiosk full of the little cards where you can put money, load the credit cards and that sort of thing, the gift cards.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't help but think about how those are used in scams all the time.
Mm-hmm.
People go and buy a bunch of cards and, the cashier may or may not say, hey, are you getting scammed here? Because they care, and Ian cared too. He'd ask questions. And if the person tells a lie, the cashier isn't held responsible.
Right.
if the person comes back time after time after time buying these gift cards, the cashier's not going to be held responsible. But Ian was.
I bought a $1,200 worth of Amazon cards, I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago from a local grocery store. I'm sorry, a Dollar Tree. And the cashier goes, "Oh, I've never seen this before." And when it brought up on a cash register, it gave her a thing to read off to me. And there was one of the questions was, "Are you going to give these cards to somebody, or are you using them for an Amazon purchase?" And I said, "Well, I'm buying some stuff on Amazon with them." Okay, and I have to inform you that that do not give these cards to anybody or give these codes to anybody, because these cards can be used by scammers. And basically, she said that she's never saw this before. But it pops up if you buy over $1,000 worth of Amazon cards, according to the manager at the store.
So that's her doing it not even on her own volition. And then if you had been instructed by your actual scammer to, if the lady at the Dollar Tree cash register asks you if it's for yourself or for someone else, tell her it's for yourself. Then you would have been like, yeah, it's for me. I'm going to buy something on Amazon.
Right.
And then she would be like, okay, sell you them and not ever face any charges of, willful ignorance. Oh, she should have known Jay was getting scammed. That's exactly the exact thing that happened in Ian's case. There's no difference at all.
Yeah, but I think that Ian, Ian was sort of aware that there are people out there getting scammed, and he wanted very much for his customers to not be those people. Now, I know. I mean, I don't know Ian a very long time, and I know when he told me that, yeah, I think I've wheeled down my customer base to people who are just investors in Bitcoin, that's what he believed.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, going on, Freeman is already serving a 9-year prison sentence. Inaccurate. He's serving an 8-year prison sentence on convictions for operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. Money laundering. It's conspiracy to commit money laundering, mind you. It says money laundering. So he includes the money laundering one in here. He's inaccurate.
Oh, yeah, that's true. The money laundering one got dropped. I forgot.
Right. The judge, after the jury found Ian guilty of money laundering, the judge said that there wasn't enough evidence and removed that. Now, I feel like he should have removed several other charges to boot, but he didn't see it the same way. Conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitting business and income tax evasion. That one specifically, there are 4 counts of income tax evasion. Out of the entire 8 counts, 1 was dropped. I think that those 4 income tax evasion ones are ludicrous. I mean, there's no evidence for it. But anyway, guess he didn't see it that way. He moved more than $10 million through his exchanges, according to prosecutors. Now, this is an important point to make. Realtors get these awards for selling $10 million worth of homes, but they only get a 7% commission on it. Now, they didn't make $10 million when they sold $10 million worth of homes. They may have gotten an award for that or whatever the case may be, but they only got commissions. And matter of fact, they don't get 7%. They get a percent. They get a cut of that 7%. And that's true with anybody who sells a high net worth item. So, gold and silver, the person has to buy the gold for X per ounce in order to sell it to you for X plus 1% per ounce. So that's how it worked with Ian too.
So basically what you're saying is it's not like Ian made $40,000 he didn't have before with these scams.
Right. He didn't make $10 million. Right.
You said 10, my bad.
Rebecca Vare and other victims told LaPlante last year that Freeman's exchanges were central to the scams that robbed them of their savings, trust, and dignity. Ian Freeman was the planner and instigator of the entire scheme, Vare told LaPlante in
Because
September.
They're allowed to just lie and say things without any evidence, and these little statements, final statements they get to give at the sentencing hearing. They can say whatever they want.
Right. What Ver doesn't say here is that had Ian never sold a single Bitcoin, she would have found somebody else who did. She would have lied to them, and she would have lost her money because that's what she was bent upon doing.
And she was dressed
her savings, her trust, and her dignity, she gave away with lies.
Just because she wanted to have sex with somebody who was in their 20s, who she had never met in real life, who she believed worked for a gas company and needed her money to replace a part on the drill. And I'm not calling her stupid or something, but she never disclosed any of that to Ian. She believed that there was this 20-something-year-old who wanted to have sex with her.
Was he in 20s? In his 20s? I mean, I saw the picture
him?
of the guy. He looked like he was in his 50s.
Oh, I didn't see the picture. I thought that he was supposed to be in his 20s. Who's 50 and works hard labor on an oil field?
There's no 50-year-old roughnecks. But come on, Bonnie, don't you know how sexy a 20-year-old roughneck is? I mean, would you want to send him a bunch of Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's why our friend, I won't say who, I don't know if he doesn't want me to say his name on the air, said the restitution should be Ian's got to sleep with these old ladies.
That's hilarious. For every it's not very nice to make fun of little old ladies, but I will say this: if I fell for the scam that there were hot young teens in my area that wanted me, you all would make fun of me. Everybody would make fun of me.
And the hot young teen worked at Sally's Beauty Supply, but all of the inventory was stolen, and she needed thousands of dollars from you to replace Sally Beauty Supplies or whatever its hot young teen works at,
Right.
I know
a ridiculous story
of a hot young girl. I haven't seen her much in a while, but she was in her 20s, and she had these sugar daddies, and she would, just send pictures of them on, to like do selfies or videos or whatever of herself on Snapchat or whatever, and so her boyfriend like takes her car and like wrecks it, and she's like, "Oh, my friend took my car and wrecked it." Like, kind of pretty trash. This girl's car, pretty good. And she got like a ton of money. I don't remember how much. It was like 5 or 6 years ago. And
that's crazy. She never had to meet with them in real life or anything.
Didn't meet with. I mean, like one guy was like, a bunch of them. There was a handful of them were like from like Asia, and they were literally just sending her like. In fact, PayPal shut her down because they sent her so much money.
Whoa.
Just out of curiosity, and she probably wouldn't tell you this, but did she send? You said she sent pictures. Were the pictures sort of what they ordered?
Absolutely.
She had her clothes taken off, and that kind of thing.
She had a premium subscription, and these guys would pay like a monthly premium.
So like an OnlyFans or something.
It would be like a boob shot, and then another shot, and then she would, do videos of like her like doing things to herself for like extra money, and at one time she was literally scouting around for some guy to like basically make porn with her, and she's like, I can't find any guys to make porn with me. Then nobody wants to do it. It pays really well. I'll give them 50%. And
was she ugly?
No, she's not ugly at all.
They just didn't want to, like,
dudes didn't want like their grandmothers and their aunties and their moms possibly seeing this.
Okay, I can't say it's your soul.
She didn't
care.
Who would see her stuff. She didn't care if her dad saw it or her uncle or whatever.
Yeah, men are supposed to be the wild ones, but oftentimes they won't participate either. And I'm sure that there's people screaming at their radios right now, but I'll do it anyway. Let's go on here. Ver, an elderly widow, was ripped off by an online romance scammer known as Michael Glenn Wilson, the crook. And by the way, this person used that same name with another of the two women that testified during the sentencing.
The Wilson, what was his name?
Michael Glenn Wilson. The crook, who has so far never been charged because they never catch these people, used Freeman's Bitcoin exchanges to facilitate the crimes. And mind you, he used other Bitcoin exchanges and all kinds of other stuff too. But because this FBI agent had a vendetta against Ian Freeman, they brought Ian up on our charges.
Mm-hmm.
In Vere's case, she emptied her savings account, cashed in her insurance policy, took out loans, and even sold her dead husband's truck.
But she came to the hearing dressed like the Queen of England with a huge brooch with a bunch of jewels on it, and she complained, "I won't even be able to get my tractor painted this year." And the other lady that came in on Zoom to testify was in a beautiful kitchen. So it's like these people aren't broke. Like, it sucks that they lost what they probably owed to their children in 5 months, but it also didn't really ruin their lives.
It sucks that they were ripped off, but lying about Ian wasn't, like, they should have been assiduously honest about what occurred, right? Like, I get it. Ian was, to their mind, part of all of this, but he isn't the one who did it. And they told him lies in order to get through his process. This Vere woman specifically said he may have asked me one question, which, I was there, not necessarily when he was talking to her, but I was there when he was talking to people, and he asked him a series of questions. Now, I sincerely wish that Mark Sisti, Ian's attorney, would have asked Ian about those questions, because I know Ian had a file with those questions, and that was never done. And I feel like that was a real problem with the case. I feel like there's several problems with the case, but Ian got his fair trial in so much as he had an attorney, and this Typical is kind of what happens.
Incompetent lawyers. I mean, they all are.
So going on here, in Vere's case, she emptied her savings account. Yep. She sent all that money right to Freeman, she told LaPlante. And that's true. At least some of it. Again and again, Wilson didn't have her send the money to him, but instead instructed her to go to Freeman, because Wilson was likely a guy in Africa or something and couldn't receive a wire.
Probably an FBI, confidential informant or, recruiter or whatever.
That's why they don't want to go with the lady Carlosino's lead on the scammer that was scamming her. She was like, by the way, during the trial, I have this guy's phone number and pictures of him or whatever. I could totally help the FBI find out who the real scammer is, but they're not interested. I don't understand. They're like, okay, that enough of that, lady.
Yeah, get her off the stand.
We're getting reports now that the FBI had several or a couple hundred of basically assets in the crowd, dressed up as playing, Trumpers, essentially, in the January 6th stuff. The Gretchen Whitmer thing, what was it, 12 out of 17 of the, the people that were going to, kidnap the governor were FBI agents. I mean, this is just classic what these guys do.
People need to just realize that anyone can represent themselves as anything in this world and actually be someone else. Like, it's just like, it would absolutely blow someone's mind to think, no, there aren't FBI agents out there scamming little old ladies or pretending to be little old ladies or are little old ladies and also FBI agents who are entrapping people and then putting them in prison for 8 years. No, that couldn't happen. Well, let me tell you a story. There was this YouTuber named Nikki Tutorials, and I was saying she was trans for like 5 years. I was just like, she's obviously trans, and people were like, there's no way she's trans. There are pictures of her as like a teenager, Bonnie, and she's like, she's wearing girl clothes, Bonnie. Then in 2020, I couldn't get enough of sending the video out to people where she came out as trans, and she had been trans since first grade or something like that, and hid it from the public, and her school and her parents participated in actively hiding it from the public. Like, you never know what you think you know about people. And I just think it's ridiculous. Like, most people walk around just like, no. If things aren't as they seem, my brain will explode. And it annoys me. She was obviously trans. She's like 6'8". It's nothing wrong with her. I was just, I could tell.
Wow.
She's from the Netherlands. I guess they're also just tall.
There you go.
No, sorry, 6 foot. It's not 8. I misspoke, but she's really tall.
Very tall woman. All right. So it says here that she sent all that Bitcoin to, it says that Bitcoin was then deposited into a digital wallet Wilson could access. This is the scammer. So Vere bought that Bitcoin from Ian and then directed Ian to deposit it into a wallet. Now, consider with Bitcoin, that could be Bear's wallet, that could be Wilson's wallet, that could be anybody's wallet. The only thing Ian could do was send it to the wallet that Bear gave him. And he did.
603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. Whatever's on your mind, you can bring up with us. 603-283-6160. More coming up.
Free Talk Live.
Oh, if only everyone were to behave in the way I think they should behave, humanity would be better off. Again, it's just trying to impose one's vision on others. You can't be humane to others by being inhumane in the first place. And by forcing them to behave or do things that you want them to do or think in the way that you want them to think, that's inhumane. You're not respecting their choices as a free, sovereign individual. And that's what liberty is all about. You respect the rights of others to live their lives, even in self-destructive ways that you think are a bad choice, so that in turn, you have the right to live your life in any way that you choose. That's what it's all about. And as soon as you violate that, as soon as you take a step into the world of initiating force on others, then anything's game. You validated that it's okay to use force to get your way as far as changing other people's behavior.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Former US President Donald Trump is blasting the civil fraud case brought against him in New York. Speaking to reporters after his defense team made its closing arguments, Mr. Trump attacked the New York Attorney General who brought the case, insulted the judge, and declared himself an innocent man.
She's a political hack, the Attorney General. The judge is obviously extremely friendly with the group, and we'll see what happens. I think maybe he may surprise people.
Donald Trump and his adult male children are accused of inflating the value of assets to obtain favourable terms from lenders. Police reportedly responded to a bomb threat at the home of the judge presiding over the case. William Denslow's outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan.
The former president denies wrongdoing and says the case should never have been brought against him. In a statement, New York Attorney General Letitia James said the trial revealed the full scale and scope of fraud committed by Trump. Before the trial began, Judge Arthur Engoron ruled the former president was liable for fraud. Prosecutors are seeking $370 million in damages and for Trump to be barred from doing business in New York. William Denslow in Lower Manhattan.
Consumer prices in the US rose again in December, according to the Labor Department. Costs for things like housing, dining out and car insurance increased more than expected, according to consumer price data that shows inflation is still holding a grip on the US economy. The Labor Department said that prices rose 3.4% in December compared with the year before. But if you strip out volatile food and fuel prices to get a sense of the underlying inflation trend, a core price measure actually dropped from 4% to 3.9%. That shows that while inflation remains faster than usual and bumps are to be expected, it is making progress back towards a normal pace. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission has approved the first ever Bitcoin exchange-traded funds to come out of the US. ETFs are investment funds that will track Bitcoin prices and pave the way for more of the public to buy it. US correspondent Benji Heyer explains.
This marks a massive step for Bitcoin, essentially allowing people to buy an ETF that invests in the cryptocurrency. An ETF is an investment fund that tracks the performance of an asset without owning it, stocks, currency, gold, for example. A Bitcoin ETF, though, opens this world to people or organizations to buy and sell to those with little trading experience. It'll be much easier to own shares of Bitcoin. It may start appearing in mainstream portfolios. The cryptocurrency soared more than 70% in recent months, but it's not endorsed or advocated by the SEC.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number for you to call. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
And Jay.
And Mark.
And it looks like we already have a caller. So Cynthia from California, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi.
Hello.
I'm looking at this issue of the constitutional issue that we have the right to select the electors who will then select the president. But we're not being given that right because apparently the GOP and the Dems have tied it all up.
I'm always wondering why are these electorate people just, how do they get these jobs? And if we don't vote them in, why are we supposed to trust them?
Actually, under the Constitution, that is arranged. Who selects our president are the electors, and we elect the electors, who then choose the president.
Right. Yeah. The people actually don't choose the president.
Right.
On voting day. So I have a little experience with this in Massachusetts during I don't know if it was 08 or 12. I forget which one, but basically what had happened. Mitt Romney was governor, and I wasn't a registered voter in Massachusetts. But I had but I was very involved in the campaign for Liberty, Ron Paul. And we actually did a whole thing where we took all the Liberty candidates and we put them on horses at any parades we go to. We went to parades, 2007. In fact, up here in 2012 on primary day, we rode horses up and down the street in Manchester, New Hampshire. It was a lot of fun, carrying a Ron Paul Lovolution flag. But anyways, a good friend of mine, Dave Kopaz, he does his podcast, Red Pill Politics. He does it on Facebook now. But anyways, he was one of the delegates for Massachusetts, a Republican Party delegate, and he was very involved with the Ron Paul campaign. And what they ended up doing is I don't think Mitt Romney was governor, actually. What they ended up doing was they made all the delegates sign affidavits stating that they were going to support Mitt Romney, and if you didn't do that, they had some kind of way just to remove you, so you weren't even a delegate. I don't know if it's exactly what you're talking about, Cynthia, and it's 10 years ago or so, but there's definitely been a lot of corruption and politics playing. And and when it comes down to it, when you sue the Republican National Convention or the DNC, they're just private charities, nonprofits, and they're not bound by any constitution or any laws that govern government or anything. The whole system's a charade.
Right, you have to sue the state because the state is keeping you from being able to put electors on the ballot, so that potential electors, people that you wish to vote for, and that way they are disenfranchising over 50% of the voters. And you could have a terrific movement if we simply locked arms with even some of the conservatives you don't like or may not like, and some of the other people you may not like, to say we have a right to have electors on the ballot, potential electors that we can vote for. Because we don't even know if we vote for the GOP candidate, we don't even know who the electors are that they've chosen.
Is there anybody out there that you could name off, say, a website or a YouTube channel or something that is actually talking about this? How maybe has a solution, maybe has a process.
G.R. Mobley, whose site is reclaimingtherepublic.org, has a radio show Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. And tomorrow he may be talking about it, or he may not. But on the Fridays he's going to have guest speakers on this issue, but maybe not beginning tomorrow.
All right, so that's reclaimingtherepublic.org. And can you say that fella's name again and maybe spell it?
He uses the initials GR, and his last name is Mobley, Mobley.
GR as in girl, Randy?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
He does grassroots organizing across the nation and works with the Wyoming state legislature, trying to return our country to a constitutional republic. And the key issue is getting our right to choose the electors.
So David Jose, who I brought up earlier in the show, is basically working on doing a similar thing. So when you say you're trying to return our country to a constitutional republic, I believe the republic is there. The problem is if you look at the republic versus the democracy, so any politician who uses the term "our democracy" is ignorant or just evil, because America is not a democracy. The word democracy is not in the Declaration of Independence. It is not in any one of the 51 constitutions. In fact, a democracy is two foxes and a chicken deciding what's for dinner. A republic is the same thing, but that chicken is very well armed.
So would it be correct to say that we democratically elect the electors?
The only part of the only democratic thing that would happen basically is the election. But we have a constitutional republic. The problem is when you have a democracy, democracy is the idea.
I totally understand that part, but I was still wondering if it was correct to say that when we vote for the electors, we are having a democratic process where we each have one vote.
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't want to misspeak because
I don't know how the electors what are they called? Delegates, the electoral college, right? The electors. I don't know how they were picked at one point, but I know that at this point the political parties choose them based on who who they've already, people, operatives within their political party, the people who go to the Democratic National Convention, people who go to the Republican National Convention. Those are the ones that, those are the sorts that from which they're picked, and they're going to go and vote for however they're going to vote.
Ballot, there needs to be a section for the listing of the people who wish to be the electors selected, right? You should have. And that should not be related to whether they're GOP or Dem or Libertarian or whatever. There should be a separate section on the ballot. You can have your popularity contest of who wants to vote for this person or that person for the presidency, but it shouldn't mean a diddly squat, because in reality, the electors are going to choose the president.
Well, hopefully they would pick whoever was voted, got the majority of the votes in their state, right?
That's what I've always heard that has always happened. That's what I've heard has always happened, but it's just the fact that it's a weird middleman that shouldn't exist. It's like, okay, if they're going to vote for whoever got the majority, why don't we just not have the delegate there? My dad told me, at least at one point when I was a kid, I was like, well, okay, then why, how do we know that they're going to vote for whoever actually won? And he's like, well, it's always been that way. They always vote for who won, but they don't have to.
Well, it wasn't always that way, but apparently before about 1850, the parties started colluding to end up being the uniparty. That it started way back then.
Right, both parties.
Lincoln, for example, never got anywhere near a majority of the vote.
Both parties essentially became co-opted by the international banking cartel, the Rothschild family, most single-handedly Ishmael Mayer Rothschild, because these guys just developed so much power over in Europe and due to their banking scheme, and they were able to essentially just dump tons of money over into the colony, the United States, and start buying power and influence, and it hasn't stopped.
So I was just looking at this. The Rothschild family achieved prominence in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. So that means the late 1700s and 1800s, after the banking dynasties founded. Mayer Ishmael Rothschild. Okay.
Right. We now have documentary evidence that Alexander Hamilton was a British spy.
Well, I believe it.
What is the evidence?
A group called, Aim for Truth or Patriots for Truth. They found in some Canadian archives a list of the spies and feel that they have a genuine document. And they have also located, I believe, a cipher in George Washington's papers.
Wow.
Which brings the question, was George Washington really part of the British effort? You see, I have a girlfriend who studies the history. She says, she thinks George Washington was interested in breaking the treaties with the Indians because he didn't like the ones that the British monarch had signed, had agreed to during the French and Indian Wars. And he figured out that you have to start a new country in order to break the treaties.
One thing I know is that the founders were weird, and I wouldn't ever choose them to control my life. Like, Benjamin Franklin was a part of this hellfire club in England where there was a church, and then it was on a hill, and under the hill was a cave that went all the way, like, a football field under the church, underground, and then there was a big opening once you got to the end of the cave, and he would have orgies in there and allegedly sacrifice goats and stuff. And that's Benjamin Franklin, one of our, founders. It's supposed to be really cool or whatever and good. I don't like any of those people, and I would rather just opt out of this crap than go back to being a republic.
Would the country have ever existed if it wasn't for these guys? I mean, there haven't been a lot of successful revolutions, and to my knowledge, very few Enlightenment revolutions. I think about the French Revolution, which was a catastrophe. It's just an awful situation. Allowed Napoleon to take control. I mean, the United States would basically be Canada if it wasn't for these guys doing whatever they did, right?
I don't know. Like,
you're
I can't.
right.
I can't just tell you what would happen if some people I've never met never lived.
Well, whoever's running around here in the United States today doesn't have the guts to, hold a revolution. I can say that much.
Well, the people back then did.
Yep, they did.
This is why the FBI will be, counter-revolutionaries, and they will start these revolutions just to make sure that they can, extinguish them right away.
Yeah. But thank you for
Certainly
the call,
seems like
Cynthia. We do have another caller on the line. We have David in New Mexico. David, what's on your mind?
Lots of stuff, Bonnie. Duh. That's crazy.
Why does he say that? I don't say duh.
No, he's just
No, you don't say duh. I say duh. You say that's crazy.
Okay. Oh, okay. I didn't realize I said that.
Yeah, that's psychology. We all, or most of us don't realize most of the things that we say that other people notice.
Yeah, like my old bosses always said that I would always say, that's annoying. This is annoying. I'm annoyed. I kind of wish I didn't do that. But anyways.
That's annoying.
Yeah. They're like, did we annoy you? When we're not here, do you talk about how annoying we are? I was like, no. Anyways, David, what did you actually have in your mind?
A couple things. But first of all, you guys talking about Jewish bankers again?
He didn't say Jewish, but he said Rothschild, and they are Jewish. Were, right? I don't know. I always hear that they are.
I guess you got to define Jewish. Because it's define Jewish because, Jew and Jewish, it seems to be a very broad definition that can mean many different things.
Khazarians, the Khazarian mob.
Okay, that's a little more specific.
I don't know what the heck that is.
Me either. I don't know what that is.
Enlighten us.
Khazaria, Kazakhstan, Silk Road. Yeah. The Silk Road, the Ashkenazi branch of the Jewish people, the Khazarians. Excuse me. Anyway,
and
now
you're
what
saying
I call
the Rothschilds were that? Oh, okay. Anyways.
Rothschild is Red Shield. Red Shield. Red Shield.
Sounds believable.
Yeah. You also want to look online, read about the Warburgs. Warburg. Warburg.
Yeah, they were
and Rothschild. They may have come to prominence with a lot of power in the whatever you said, the 1700s, 1800s, but they go back earlier than that, and they may have had a different name. They changed their names. The power brokers, when they moved from one part of Europe to another part back hundreds of years ago, before we had modern ability to track who people were, you could basically dissolve one identity and go somewhere else and become a whole new person. And that's what people did in the centuries past. But and so speaking of bankers, before I get to what I really want to talk about, this is easy. Those of you that like Bonnie and Mark, and I don't know if Jay is into it, but what's everybody's favorite crypto wallets and crypto exchanges nowadays?
Edge wallet is good for your phone, and Exodus is good
Well,
for a laptop.
just because Mark invented it? Just because Mark invented it, is that why you're saying that, Bonnie?
I wish Mark invented it.
But the thing that's nice about Edge is like to just recommend somebody to get into Bitcoin. It's like go download an Edge wallet.
Yep.
It's just super user friendly. It's password. You do have to like go in there and manually back up, do your seed phrase to each wallet. One thing that is cool about the Edge wallet is when you break your phone, as long as you remember your actual password, Edge will, basically your wallet gets
repopulated
onto your new device. And I don't know if it gets I had a problem like a couple years ago. I had an Edge wallet on a phone. I broke the phone, and I don't know if I had forgotten a password or didn't have the password correct or something, and I had to do some jargon around and email, but I was eventually, or maybe I had the password correct, but it's like a week delay before the population comes back. I remembered it was like a week layover time, and just in case like your phone got, there was somebody scamming or something. I don't remember the details, but it's pretty user friendly, especially if you're like sort of like not real responsible. I mean, I can't believe how many people create these Bitcoin wallets. They never write down a seed phrase. They don't take it and put it in a very safe spot. I literally know a guy who did this with 1,000 Bitcoin like 12 years ago. And, he'd be set for life right now. And I've also known a whole bunch of people who did. I did it with a wallet, because I'm like, I'll do that tomorrow. And like a week later, the device that it was on got, stepped on by a horse, and I could never turn it on. It was a tablet. And, and it's got like 1.3 Bitcoin on it. I never backed it up,
Why did you ask?
How about the? Pardon? Why do I ask?
Yeah.
Oh, just because I've been playing around with the crypto stuff on a, what do you call it, a simulator. This one happens to be from, I forget what service it was, but I've been playing around with it. So, and I'm not doing too bad. So the next step obviously is to start playing with real money and see if you do as well as you did in the simulation.
That's the next step. My thought is that I don't know what's going to happen with Bitcoin. I think in the short to medium term that it's probably a pretty good investment. I like the idea of having a certain amount that one picks, right? Like 1 Bitcoin, 10 Bitcoins, 100 Bitcoins, whatever the number is that you think is the right number for you, and just kind of holding that and keeping it. But then also the expectation that I believe Bitcoin's to some extent been co-opted, right? Like, I think it's going to continue to go up because now people who want it to go up are going to make sure that it does. The same people that were keeping it down for a period of time. But I tend to think that it's not the best cryptocurrency for the people. I used to think Bitcoin was money for the people. I don't believe that anymore.
Well, because it got messed with all the people that were part of banks and the people that went against Bitcoin Cash basically messed with it and made it all crappy to where when it gets too expensive, well, all of a sudden you can't even buy a cup of coffee with it because the fee is going to be $25.
Yeah, I actually just did a Bitcoin transaction like a week ago, and it still hasn't gone through. And I paid a
low fee.
So it was $150, and I put on a low fee that was like $6.10.
Whoa!
And so basically, and the guy I sent it to, he's like, just let it ride. If it doesn't go through, we'll cancel it. And I've actually had to cancel several Bitcoin transactions and either put in a higher fee or just do the settlement in another coin. And it seems like the coin that everybody seems the top 4 coins. So people are like, if you can't do Bitcoin, we'll do Monero. Everybody really likes Monero, and that seems to work fine. And then the other 2 that I noticed that just work flawlessly is Dash. Never have a problem with Dash.
Me too.
And Bitcoin Cash.
Those are the 4 I'd recommend too.
Really good.
Well, Mark, did you have anything else on that? And thank you for the call, David. But did you have anything else on that article about Ian?
Let me check it here. I guess we'll just jump towards the end here because we don't have too much time. Yep. Prosecutors have argued Freeman either knew or at best actively worked to not know that he was facilitating crimes with his cryptocurrency transactions.
And
it's
let's
true.
talk about that. Actively worked to not know.
The prosecutors certainly argued that.
Yeah, but let's just talk about what that means. The prosecution is saying if you don't break a law, but it seems like you probably went around it, they say, then they're reading your mind, and they'll tell a jury, hey, it looks like he purposely skirted around this. He didn't break law, but he was really careful about it. And the judge even made a dumb comment like that where he was like, the thing about it, Ian, is I don't think that you necessarily did something wrong in some instance, but you are really smart and you went around it on purpose. So you didn't break the law, but, well, you're smart enough to not break the law and you were able to continue doing business. So they got you, I guess.
Right. That's a fascinating thing that they said, because it was like, you shouldn't know that. What they were trying to say is you shouldn't be looking at the law. You shouldn't know the law in your particular field of expertise. You shouldn't look at these laws. You should just do what you think is right. And of course, Ian was doing exactly that. He was doing what he was right, what he thought was right, which is allowing people to buy Bitcoin without having to go through the government KYC. And that's what he thought. Now, it says here, this is important. Bitcoin was known throughout the Bitcoin community for charging higher fees than other market operators and for asking fewer questions, prosecutors have said. And it's true. Prosecutors did say that. But he wasn't getting more higher fees than anybody else. It was the area, pretty much everybody on Bitcoin Locator. What was it called?
Local Bitcoins.
Localbitcoins.com. Thank you. Localbitcoins.com had the same fees as Ian had. So the idea that he was higher is inaccurate. Now, he was certainly higher than someplace like Kraken, but the point should be made is that if these little old ladies bought their coins on Kraken, they could have certainly gone through the process. And if they had, so what? Kraken would have sold it to them.
Yep.
Right? Wouldn't have made a difference. And they wouldn't have gone to prison.
Yeah.
So, this is really, it wasn't about little old ladies getting ripped off. It was never about little old ladies getting ripped off. They were convenient for the story.
This was about witch hunt.
Yeah. This was about Ian wanting to provide people with the ability to get Bitcoin, which was supposed to be pseudonymous in the first place. That's what Satoshi Nakamoto wanted. Ian was, forwarding the vision.
And in my opinion, this is why the only one of the Crypto 6 who had their charges completely dropped was the little old lady.
Yeah, sure. They didn't want to make it look like the FBI was going after little old ladies too. Even though little old ladies got up on the website on the stand and admitted to the same things that Ian did, worse, in fact.
And a little old lady, probably older than most of the ones who got scammed, 75. She went up there and said, I'm Ian's real life friend. I am personally interested in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I invest in them. And Ian has helped me for hours and hours for free. He just wants to get Bitcoin in people's hands. And if he wanted to scam me, he could have easily. And he never did. And yeah, I'm 75 and I like Bitcoin and like investing in it. So the jury should have no reason to believe that Ian should have believed that anyone who was old couldn't possibly actually have wanted to buy Bitcoin.
And I think that was one of those things where Ian's defense just didn't ask the right question, didn't ask enough questions.
Didn't emphasize enough stuff to the jury.
Right. Didn't allow Ian to humanize himself before the jury.
It's been Free Talk Live. And you can find more at freetalklive.com. Thank you for listening, and peace.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real.